Chapter 3878. This. The Feather Emperor hesitated and shook his head. I think it's better not to provoke them. The Blood Ancestor and the little rabbit nodded in agreement. Ahem. Longchen coughed and looked at the three of them. Although what I'm about to say is a bit disrespectful, I can't help but want to say it. Now that you've been driven out of your homeland, you still don't dare to attack. This seems a bit beneath your status as leaders. The Feather Emperor, the Blood Ancestor, and the little rabbit immediately glared at Longchen. I think so too. Aren't you a bit too afraid of the Divine Kingdom? Qin Feiyang said with a dry smile. Brat, who are you looking down on? The Feather Emperor looked at Qin Feiyang angrily. No. I just feel that being so timid is not the way to solve the problem. Qin Feiyang smiled. The Feather Emperor raised his eyebrows. Alas, maybe we're really old. But suddenly, the Blood Ancestor shook his head and sighed. The Feather Emperor and the little rabbit couldn't help but look at the Blood Ancestor. Thinking back, we only mastered one ultimacy and dared to fight with the Divine Kingdom. Now our strength is not what it used to be, but we are still timid. To be honest, we really need to reflect. The Blood Ancestor looked at the two of them and sighed. The Feather Emperor and the little rabbit heard this and fell silent for a while. They couldn't help but smile bitterly. Yes, back then, they had the courage to face the experts of the Divine Kingdom, but now they were like cowards. As Longchen said, they were the leaders of the Sky Cloud Realm. If even they were like this, could the Sky Cloud Realm still be saved? One couldn't lose their courage. As a leader, one had to shoulder the responsibility of a leader. Phew. The Feather Emperor took a deep breath and looked up at the middle-aged man in golden armor. His eyes instantly became sharp and he said, we can't always live in their shadow. Yes. Today is different from the past. We're not weak now. The Blood Ancestor nodded. His previous fear had disappeared, and his gaze was as sharp as a blade. Little Rabbit glanced at the two people and said with a chuckle, either way, we'll have to face them sooner or later. Then let's go all out and fight. Qin Feiyang and Longchen looked at each other when they heard this. Their dormant fighting spirit was gradually awakened. However, Feiyang, don't be in a rush to attack. Furthermore, you must conceal your purple gold dragon bloodline's bloodline power properly. Unless absolutely necessary, you must not expose it. Feather Emperor looked at Qin Feiyang and instructed. We do need to pay attention to this. First of all, the Master of the Divine Kingdom doesn't know that the Princess of the Divine Kingdom and the Human Emperor already have a child. Given the pride of the ruler of the Divine Kingdom, once he learns of this, he will definitely be furious. Secondly, you are our trump card. We have to save you for the crucial moment. The little rabbit nodded. Then what's the point? Qin Feiyang was displeased. The Blood Ancestor said angrily. You think this is a game? This is war, not a joke. You have to listen to us. Okay. I'll listen. Qin Feiyang was helpless. The little rabbit looked at Longchen and said, and you? Although we don't know how strong you are, as the son of the ice dragon, you certainly don't lack powerful trump cards. Therefore, we also hope that you can preserve your strength for the time being. Can I take this as your concern for me? Longchen was stunned and asked with a smile. Up to you. The little rabbit waved her paw. The Feather Emperor shook his head and smiled. He looked at Longchen and said, now, regardless of our identities, we are all members of the Sky Cloud Realm. Young people like you are the hope of the future. Therefore, you have to work hard. Longchen looked at the Feather Emperor, the Blood Ancestor, and the little rabbit. Suddenly, he was somewhat envious of Qin Feiyang. No matter what kind of environment he was in, there would always be a group of elders who cared about him. This kind of warmth was irreplaceable by anything. If only his father could care about him like this, how good would that be? The Feather Emperor took a few deep breaths and looked up at the middle-aged man in golden armor. He sneered and said, are you waiting for us? Watch how we catch you off guard. Let's go. The little rabbit immediately led the four people and descended in the sky above the Sky Cloud Realm. Boom. The Blood Ancestor immediately attacked. The Death Law, Time Law, and Slaughter Law's ultimate profoundness instantly appeared. The terrifying aura shattered the sky and stirred the sea for hundreds of millions of miles. The middle-aged man in golden armor was startled. He immediately opened his eyes and looked up. When he saw Qin Feiyang and the others, his thick black eyebrows suddenly raised. Die. The blood ancestor grinned hideously. Generally speaking, such a sudden attack would definitely cause one to panic and be unable to react in time. However, the middle-aged man in golden armor was calm. There was even a trace of disdain in his eyes. Just as the three ultimate profoundness arrived in front of the middle-aged man in golden armor, a terrifying divine power surged out from the middle-aged man's body. Following closely, lightning emerged one after another. This aura. Be careful, it's the aura of the thunder battle armor. Qin Feiyang's pupil shrank. As expected, the next moment, a purple gold battle armor appeared on the middle-aged man's body. Lightning swept in all directions. It was the thunder battle armor of the red-haired old man. Is this the armor of the mid-level sovereign divine weapon that you mentioned? The Feather Emperor was surprised. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and said in a deep voice, the thunder battle armor is on this person. The thunder battle axe might also be in his hands. You must be careful. As he spoke, the three ultimate profoundness with monstrous power drowned the middle-aged man in golden armor. Even the indestructible Sky Cloud Island was instantly shattered. The surrounding waves surged, covering the sky and the sun. I was worried about not being able to find you. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me. The middle-aged man in golden armor's voice sounded in the dust. Clang. Accompanied by a deafening sound, a sharp light emerged and turned into a wave, tearing the sky and splitting the earth as it charged toward the blood ancestor. It is indeed on him. Retreat. Qin Feiyang's expression changed as he retreated with lightning speed. The blood ancestor, Long Chun, the Feather Emperor, and the little rabbit didn't dare to be negligent. They were extremely annoyed. They didn't expect to encounter two mid-level sovereign divine weapons. Two mid-level sovereign divine weapons are not to be trifled with. Celestial Sword, go help. Long Chun whispered. Don't expose Celestial Sword yet. Qin Feiyang stopped Long Chun and shook his head. Celestial Sword was also a mid-level sovereign divine weapon. It could be said that it was the trump card of the Sky Cloud realm. It had to be saved at the critical moment to surprise the enemy with a fatal blow. Long Chun turned and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Don't worry. Now Fire Dance, Azure Dragon, and the Sea Lion Emperor are all in the Black Tortoise realm. We have enough strength to contend with these two mid-level sovereign divine weapons. Qin Feiyang said. At the same time, in the Black Tortoise realm, above the Devil's Land, Qin Feiyang's voice sounded. Fire Dance, Senior Azure Dragon, Yin Xiang, lend me your sovereign divine weapons. Hearing this voice, everyone who was in seclusion opened their eyes. What was going on? He wanted to borrow their sovereign divine weapons? Could it be Qin Feiyang had already killed his way back to the Sky Cloud realm? Thinking of this, everyone's face sank. They immediately took out their respective sovereign divine weapons. Outside, terrifying sharpness rolled in. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the sovereign divine weapons of the land of buried gods, including the Yin Yang Mirror and Princess Huofeng's sovereign divine weapon, appeared. Why did he only summon the land of buried gods and Princess Huofeng's sovereign divine weapon? This was because when they fought with the blood-red clothed old man last time, only these sovereign divine weapons appeared. The Divine Kingdom's foundation was unfathomable. If they could hide their strength, they would do so. In short, they couldn't expose their full strength to the Divine Kingdom too early. When the blood ancestor saw the sovereign divine weapons appear, he immediately took out the demon vanquishing staff and the illusory demon orb. Although the sovereign divine weapons had been damaged when they fought with the red-haired old man, they weren't too serious. Thus, they had been repaired in the Black Tortoise realm for the past few years. The land of buried gods had 8 sovereign divine weapons. Princess Huofeng had 11 sovereign divine weapons. In addition to the Yin Yang Mirror, the illusory demon orb, and the demon vanquishing staff, there were a total of 21 sovereign divine weapons. The blood ancestor waved his hand, and the 21 sovereign divine weapons awakened. A terrifying aura swept out in all directions, and the sharpness that surged toward them instantly shattered the void. Just as old Wu said, there are quite a few sovereign divine weapons. But that's all. This time, I won't give you any chance to turn the tables. After all, this isn't a training trip. The golden-armored middle-aged man stepped into the air. Wearing thunder armor and holding a thunder axe, he looked like a god. He looked at the yin-yang mirror and the sovereign divine weapons with disdain in his eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, a sword light swept out from his body. As soon as this sword light appeared, heaven and earth trembled. This is... The blood ancestor, the little rabbit, and the feather emperor were shocked. This is the sword light we were talking about, Qin Feiyang said in a low voice. According to the Divine Kingdom's princess, this sword light came from the Divine Kingdom's sovereign divine weapon. And the Divine Kingdom's sovereign divine weapon was a high-grade sovereign divine weapon. He used his most terrifying trump card right off the bat. It seemed like this person was right. The Divine Kingdom hadn't come to train the younger generation. Instead, they had come to kill them. All of this was because the princess of the Divine Kingdom had fallen in love with the human emperor and betrayed the Divine Kingdom. Die. The golden-armored middle-aged man waved his hand, and the sword light annihilated the sky as it attacked the yin-yang mirror and the other sovereign divine weapons. Although the sovereign divine weapons had been fully awakened, they seemed particularly small in the face of this sword light. Just as the sword light collided with the sovereign divine weapons, the golden-armored middle-aged man smiled coldly. With the thunder axe in his hand, he instantly charged in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. Retreat. The feather emperor roared, looking very flustered. But in fact, whether it was the feather emperor or Qin Feiyang and the others, they were extremely calm. Their panicked appearance was just an act. It was to make the golden-armored middle-aged man think that they were at the end of their rope. Without these sovereign divine weapons, let's see how you fight back. The golden-armored middle-aged man sneered and attacked with the thunder axe. Seeing that Qin Feiyang and the others were about to die, the blood ancestor suddenly laughed and said, "Do you think we only have these sovereign divine weapons? If we only have these sovereign divine weapons, do you think we would dare to return to the Sky Cloud realm?" As his voice fell, the sword of Thanatos and the other sovereign divine weapons that had been waiting in the Black Tortoise realm all attacked in an instant. There were more than 20 sovereign divine weapons. It crushed everything in its path. What? The golden-armored middle-aged man's body stiffened. He had thought that as long as the sword light restrained the yin-yang mirror and the other sovereign divine weapons, the thunder axe would be able to easily kill these people. But he had never imagined that the other party would have so many sovereign divine weapons. Sorry, I have something to do today, so I can only update 2 chapters. Chapter 38-79. He was completely caught off guard. More than 20 sovereign divine weapons attacked. The thunder battle axe shattered on the spot. The terrifying aura drowned the golden-armored man. The thunder battle armor on his body also cracked. His body was dripping with blood in an instant. Kill him and take the thunder battle axe and thunder battle armor. The blood ancestor's eyes lit up. If he could subdue these 2 mid-level sovereign divine weapons, the strength of the Sky Cloud realm would undoubtedly skyrocket. You overestimate yourself. When the golden-armored man heard the blood ancestor's words, he couldn't help but laugh contemptuously. Clang! A change occurred. Accompanied by a loud noise, a monstrous sharpness surged out and swept across the sky. This is... The moment this sharpness appeared, Qin Feiyang and the others felt a fatal crisis. The next moment, a giant sword appeared. This sword was 3 meters long and as wide as an adult's palm. It was purple-gold in color, and a purple-gold divine dragon was clinging to it. The golden-armored man grabbed the giant sword and slashed it in the air. Thousands of sword lights appeared, containing an indestructible power. The sword of death and the other sovereign divine weapons were shattered. How is this possible? Not to mention the sovereign divine weapons, even Qin Feiyang and the others couldn't help but shudder in fear. A total of more than 20 sovereign divine weapons were all damaged in an instant. What level of sovereign divine weapon was this giant sword? Boom. After the yin-yang mirror and the other sovereign divine weapons shattered the sword chi, they shouted, "Run!" Long Chen quivered, held the badge in his hand, and quickly opened a space-time passage. Quick! No one dared to delay. Whether it was Qin Feiyang and the others or the sovereign divine weapons, they immediately rushed into the space-time passage. Still want to run? The golden-armored man sneered and slashed the passage with his sword. The passage collapsed immediately. Qin Feiyang and the others, along with the sovereign divine weapons, fell out of the space-time passage. They all looked extremely miserable. No one can escape. The golden-armored man was like a god of death. The purple gold giant sword swept toward Qin Feiyang and the others. At this moment, Qin Feiyang and the others, as well as the sovereign's divine weapons, sensed the aura of death. Without any hesitation, they turned around and fled. Do you know what it means to have no way out? The golden-armored middle-aged man laughed out loud. The giant sword's godly might surged, sweeping up the golden-armored middle-aged man, and chasing after Qin Feiyang and the others. Its speed was many times faster. Is this the divine weapon of the sovereign of the divine kingdom? Long Chen's gaze was solemn. This huge sword's power had already far surpassed a middle-class dominator weapon. If it wasn't a high-class dominator weapon, then what was it? Just how powerful is a high-grade dominator weapon? Qin Feiyang frowned. I don't know. The Blood Ancestor, the Feather Emperor, and the Little Rabbit shook their heads. This was the first time they had seen a sovereign weapon of this level. Long Chen said, I remember Father saying before that a high-class dominator divine weapon requires 10 mid-class dominator divine weapons to contend against it. What? Only 10 mid-level dominator divine weapons can contend against it. Qin Feiyang and the others were dumbfounded. According to this calculation, wouldn't they need at least 100 low-class dominator divine weapons to contend against a high-class dominator divine weapon? Because 10 low-class dominator divine weapons could contend against 1 mid-class dominator divine weapon, and 10 mid-class dominator divine weapons were naturally equal to 100 low-class dominator divine weapons. 100 low-class dominator divine weapons. Even if all the dominator divine weapons in the Sky Cloud realm were added together, they still wouldn't be able to gather that many. Brother Qin, it seems like we still need you to make a move. Long Chen smiled bitterly. He didn't expect the Divine Kingdom to take out such a terrifying trump card right from the start. 2 mid-class dominator divine weapons and 1 high-class dominator divine weapon. For the Sky Cloud realm, it was simply a one-sided situation. Although Long Chen also had the Heavenly God Sword as a trump card, it seemed to have lost its effect against the giant sword. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. He suddenly stopped and turned to look at the golden-armored middle-aged man. You know you can't escape, so you've given up? The golden-armored middle-aged man also stopped and looked at them mockingly. Do you have to make a scene like this? Qin Feiyang didn't answer but asked instead. The golden-armored middle-aged man was stunned. Long Chen couldn't help but turn to look at Qin Feiyang. There was a trace of suspicion in his eyes. What was this guy thinking to ask such a question? The Sky Cloud realm isn't in the wrong. It's your divine kingdom that's in the wrong. Back then, the younger generation of your divine kingdom came to the Sky Cloud realm and used it as a training ground. You harmed innocent creatures and even wanted to harm the underworld king, hell, and other continents. Have you ever thought about how much harm this will bring to us? Qin Feiyang frowned. Are you trying to reason with me? The golden-armored middle-aged man looked at Qin Feiyang strangely. I just want you to stop invading the Sky Cloud realm and other continents. Otherwise, you'll harm innocent creatures and give us a chance. Qin Feiyang sighed. Hearing these words, Feather Emperor, Little Rabbit, and Blood Ancestor couldn't help but turn to look at Qin Feiyang. Give each other a chance. The meaning of these words was quite obvious. Qin Feiyang wanted to reconcile with the Divine Kingdom. Thinking about it, it made sense. Although Qin Feiyang had already stated that he would always stand on the side of the Sky Cloud realm, the Divine Kingdom was the home of the Divine Kingdom's princess after all. Moreover, Qin Feiyang didn't have to think for himself, but he had to think for Qin Batian. Qin Batian was the son of the human emperor and the Divine Kingdom's princess. The king of the Divine Kingdom was Qin Baishan's grandfather. Grandfather. These were the closest people to him. If possible, no one wished for them to completely fall out with each other. They were originally a family. Why bother? Everyone should be friendly and give each other a chance to get along. Wasn't that good? Sigh. The Feather Emperor sighed. He could understand Qin Feiyang's mood, because Qin Feiyang had always been a person who valued kinship. However, would the Divine Kingdom? Would the high and mighty king of the Divine Kingdom value kinship? He was afraid that Qin Feiyang's painstaking efforts would only be met with merciless ridicule and contempt. Sure enough, the middle-aged man in golden armor had a disdainful look on his face. He sneered and said, "You ants are qualified to talk about opportunities with the Divine Kingdom? It's ridiculous. Everything in the world is equal. Even if it's just an ant, it still has survival value. We don't deny the power of the Divine Kingdom. But no matter how strong you are still the same as us. You are just a speck of dust in this world. So I really can't see how you are superior to us. I also don't know where your sense of superiority comes from." Qin Feiyang frowned. Why did these people feel that they were superior? Strength? Status? No matter how strong they were or how high their status was, could they be higher than the sky? Hearing these words, the middle-aged man in golden armor looked at Qin Feiyang in a daze. His eyes were as if he was looking at a fool. How could a weak person talk about equality and value in front of a strong person? Was there something wrong with his brain? Whoosh! At this time, accompanied by the sound of the air breaking, more than a dozen people came through the air. They were the companions of the middle-aged man in golden armor. They were hiding in various places. When they heard the commotion, they immediately rushed over. More than a dozen people surrounded them. Their auras were unfathomable. When they saw the sovereign divine weapons beside Qin Feiyang and the others, their pupils shrank. There were so many sovereign divine weapons. It seemed that they had underestimated the strength of the sky cloud realm. A middle-aged woman looked at the middle-aged man in golden armor suspiciously and asked, "Why didn't you attack?" "I met a very interesting person, so we chatted for a while." The middle-aged man in golden armor smiled playfully. Interesting person? More than a dozen people were taken aback. They looked at Qin Feiyang and the others. The middle-aged man in golden armor pointed at Qin Feiyang and joked, "It's this kid who talked to me about qualifications, fairness and value. He even asked us to stop and give each other a chance." The dozen people were stunned and looked at Qin Feiyang strangely. "Kid, what chance are you talking about?" One of the old men in black was curious. Qin Feiyang looked around at everyone and said to the old man in black, "Give peace to the sky cloud realm, and give you a chance to be human again." Give us a chance to be human again? The group of people looked at each other. What an idiot. Because if he wasn't a fool, why would he say such shameless words in front of them? "Feiyang, they won't understand your good intentions." The Feather Emperor sighed. "Yes. Don't waste your energy. Some people just won't cry until they are in the coffin." The blood ancestor glanced at the group of people, his eyes flashing with killing intent. "Haha. You ants are really getting more and more interesting." The group of people laughed mercilessly. Looking at these faces, Qin Feiyang's heart was full of self-mockery. For such arrogant people, he actually had a trace of illusion? How ridiculous. Can't reason with them, okay, then let's solve it with fists. In his eyes, a shocking murderous intent instantly appeared. Immediately, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the major sovereign weapons entered the Black Tortoise realm one after another. The reason for that was because the ruler divine weapons had already been severely damaged. They were no longer of any help. Not to mention now, there is no need for the help of these sovereign weapons. Yo, you can't reason with them, so you're starting to get angry? Don't, we just arrived and haven't heard enough. Continue, it's quite interesting. The middle-aged woman laughed sarcastically. The other dozen people also had a playful smile on their faces. Looking at these faces, not to mention the Feather Emperor, the Blood Ancestor, the Little Rabbit, even Long Chen was angry. Who are you looking down on? Do you really think that the Sky Cloud Realm is a place where you can behave atrociously? Long Chen looked at Qin Feiyang fiercely and said, "Brother Qin, if you don't kill them, I will break off with you." Break off? The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched, and he said speechlessly, "I don't seem to have much friendship with you, but these people really need to be taught a lesson." The Feather Emperor's eyes flashed, looking at Qin Feiyang, and said loudly, "Since you don't like them, then go and ask Qin Xiaotian to come out and teach them a lesson." Qin Xiaotian? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Long Chun, the Feather Emperor, and the little rabbit couldn't help but look at the blood ancestor suspiciously. Was there such a person here? To open the Eye of Heaven, you must first open the purple gold dragon soul. Once you open the purple gold dragon soul, the people of the Divine Kingdom will definitely think that you are the descendant of the human emperor and the Divine Kingdom's princess. When this matter reaches the ears of the master of the Divine Kingdom, he will definitely be furious. At that time, you may become the most important target in their eyes. We still don't know the true strength of the Divine Kingdom, so for your safety, we have to hide it for now. The blood ancestor secretly explained. Chapter 3880. That makes sense. The Feather Emperor and the little rabbit nodded. Is that necessary? Long Chen expressed his doubts. Anyway, Qin Feiyang's identity would be exposed sooner or later. Yes. Besides, it won't take much effort. You can go to the Black Tortoise realm and change your appearance. Besides, don't you think it will be fun? The blood ancestor's words were full of ridicule. Fun. Qin Feiyang and Long Chun were suspicious. That's right. We will fabricate a character called Qin Xiaotian. At that time, wouldn't it be fun to watch them search everywhere and hunt down this Qin Xiaotian that we made up? The blood ancestor laughed secretly. The corners of Qin Feiyang and Long Chen's mouths twitched. This little old man was really bad. However, this wouldn't work. After all, the people of the Sky Cloud realm now knew that the person with the purple gold dragon blood was Qin Feiyang, not Qin Xiaotian. At that time, the people of the Divine Kingdom would casually ask around and find out. I know your concerns, but this is also very simple. Now that the people of the Sky Cloud realm have united, we will go and tell them, and they will definitely cooperate with us. The blood ancestor said secretly. Okay. We will listen to you. Qin Feiyang nodded and entered the Black Tortoise realm. What the hell? The middle-aged man in golden armor, and the others looked at the blood ancestor, and the others suspiciously. Qin Xiaotian? Who was this person? He actually said that he was going to ask this person to come out and deal with them? Was this person very strong? The dozen people were not in a hurry to make a move, because they had the sovereign divine weapon of the Divine Kingdom. They were full of confidence that no matter what tricks Qin Feiyang and the others played, it would be useless. On the contrary, they were looking forward to the person that Qin Feiyang and the others had fabricated. Boom. Soon, a terrifying murderous aura emerged. The next moment, a young man in a blood-red robe appeared. It was Qin Feiyang. But now his temperament was completely different from before. His blood-red hair fluttered wildly while his entire body was filled with a baleful and vicious aura that couldn't be dispersed. He was like the god of death that had returned from hell. Furthermore, he was wearing a blood-red mask. This mask was condensed from the blood of the Western region's blood sea, and its murderous aura was overwhelming. Greetings, Lord Qin Xiaotian. The Feather Emperor, Little Rabbit, and Ancestor Devil looked at each other and bowed. Ugh. Qin Feiyang looked at the three of them in astonishment. Were they also three actors? Long Chen was also quite speechless. He cleared his throat and also looked at Qin Feiyang, respectfully saying, "Greetings, sir." Qin Feiyang had no choice but to cooperate. He said coldly, "No need to be so polite. I just heard from Qin Feiyang that someone wants to kill you?" "Yes. It's these people. They are from the Divine Kingdom. Just like last time, they are preparing to invade our Sky Cloud realm." The blood ancestor pointed at the golden-armored middle-aged man and roared angrily. "Divine Kingdom, you are going too far." Qin Feiyang looked at the golden-armored middle-aged man and the others and shouted. His voice also changed. It was loud and deafening, full of energy, and carried the majesty of a superior. "You are the Qin Xiaotian they were talking about?" The golden-armored middle-aged man sized up Qin Feiyang. "That's me. I have long heard that the Divine Kingdom is very strong. Now, I really want to see it for myself." Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. With a thought, the 3,000 clones were activated. Although the 3,000 clones didn't have masks, their facial features were very blurry. Clones? The golden-armored middle-aged man, and the others were stunned. This was the so-called strong expert? That was too ridiculous. Did he think that he could scare them by creating a group of clones? But at the same time, the purple gold giant sword had a trace of doubt in its heart. This didn't seem to be a clone. I thought that the people of the Divine Kingdom were knowledgeable. It turns out that you are just a group of frogs at the bottom of a well. Qin Feiyang's blood-red eyes were full of disdain. The 3,000 clones stood behind Qin Feiyang, each of them exuding a terrifying aura. Blood Ancestor. Qin Feiyang suddenly looked at the Blood Ancestor. The Blood Ancestor understood and instantly activated the ultimate mysteries of the Time Law and Death Law. Now, I will let you broaden your horizons. Qin Feiyang sneered. Roar. Accompanied by deafening dragon roars, 3,000 purple gold dragon souls roared out. What? Seeing this scene, the disdain on the golden-armored middle-aged man and the others' faces suddenly froze. Purple gold dragon souls. Their faces were instantly filled with disbelief. How could these ants from a low-level civilization activate the purple gold dragon souls? One had to know. Purple gold dragon souls were rare even in the Divine Kingdom. Eye of Heaven activate. The next moment, an even more shocking scene appeared. The 3,000 clones roared in unison, and the purple gold dragon soul's glabella immediately split open, revealing a third eye. This was the Eye of Heaven. Not only did they activate the purple gold dragon souls, but they also activated the Eye of Heaven. This is impossible. The golden-armored middle-aged man and the others shook their heads. What was even more unbelievable was that these thousands of clones could activate their battle souls. You also know about the Eye of Heaven? It seems that the Divine Kingdom is not so high and mighty. Qin Feiyang's eyes were full of disdain. The 3,000 clones looked at each other and activated the Eye of Heaven. The golden-armored middle-aged man and the others were dumbfounded. What the hell was going on? Kill him quickly. The giant sword suddenly shouted. The golden-armored middle-aged man was shocked. The giant sword said in a deep voice, "He is not a clone but 3,000 clones." What? 3,000 clones? The expressions of the dozen people changed immediately. At the same time, Qin Feiyang and Long Chen were also stunned. How could these people know 3,000 clones? Quick. Otherwise, we will be in big trouble. When the middle-aged woman came back to her senses, she looked at the golden-armored middle-aged man and shouted. It seemed that not only did they know about the 3,000 clones, but they also knew the lethality of the clones. The golden-armored middle-aged man shuddered and charged toward Qin Feiyang with the giant sword. Quick! The Blood Ancestor urged. However, at this moment, Qin Feiyang was facing a huge crisis. Because the Eye of Heaven could not quickly replicate the Blood Ancestor's ultimate meaning. It was quite slow, just like when he fought with the Queen of Flame last time. He originally thought that it was slow because he himself had not mastered the ultimate meaning. In other words, if he had mastered the ultimate meaning, the replication speed would definitely be faster. Therefore, whether it was Qin Feiyang, Long Chen, or the Blood Ancestor, they were all full of confidence. But they never expected that it would still be slow. Was this the upper limit of the Eye of Heaven? Don't panic. Although the speed is still so slow, the environment we are in now is different. You couldn't enter the Black Tortoise realm in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. But now you can. The Blood Ancestor reminded. That's right. 5,000 years in the Black Tortoise realm. As long as they entered the Black Tortoise realm, even if it took a day to replicate, it would only take a blink of an eye outside. Moreover, to replicate the ultimate meaning, it would not take a day at all. Qin Feiyang suddenly came to a realization, and immediately led everyone and the 3,000 clones into the Black Tortoise realm. The golden-armored middle-aged man raised his eyebrows and his divine sense surged out, instantly capturing the Black Tortoise realm in the void. Shatter his spatial divine item. They all thought that this was just a spatial divine item. Little did they know that they were facing a real world. The purple gold giant sword, with a monstrous sharpness, charged toward the Black Tortoise realm. What are you doing? But at this moment, A shout rang out and a woman around 30 years old appeared out of thin air, blocking the Black Tortoise realm. She was wearing a purple gold dress and her soft long hair was tied up high, looking graceful and luxurious. Princess! The golden-armored middle-aged man and the others trembled. The giant sword also stopped in the void. That's right. She was the princess of the Divine Kingdom. During these years in the Black Tortoise realm, she had also reconstructed her physical body, and her current appearance was her human form. The princess of the Divine Kingdom glanced at the golden-armored middle-aged man and the others, then looked at the giant sword and smiled. Dragon God Sword, I thought that after so many years, you had already forgotten me. This sovereign watched you grow up. How could this sovereign forget you? The Dragon God Sword sighed, his voice filled with vicissitudes of life. The princess of the Divine Kingdom sighed. I should have disappointed you. You shouldn't ask me this. You should ask your father, ask the people of the Divine Kingdom if they were disappointed. The Dragon God Sword shouted, his tone was full of anger. I'm sorry, but I didn't do anything wrong. I just want to be with the person I like. If my father didn't object back then, why would I leave the Divine Kingdom? Go back. I beg you, don't hurt the Sky Cloud realm anymore. The princess of the Divine Kingdom begged. When Qin Feiyang looked for Yin Xiang and the others to get the sovereign divine weapon, she had already woken up. Just a while ago, when Qin Feiyang and the others returned to the Black Tortoise realm, she asked Qin Feiyang to send her out. Qin Feiyang didn't agree at first, but he couldn't dissuade this old ancestor, so he could only send her out. The princess of the Divine Kingdom came out to persuade the Dragon God Sword, the golden-armored middle-aged man, and the others. After all, these were her people. The Dragon God was her father's sovereign divine weapon, and he had taken care of her since she was young. She didn't want to see Qin Feiyang and the others injured, and she couldn't bear to see the Dragon God Sword and her people die. Although she knew that even if she came out, she might not be able to persuade the Dragon God Sword, the golden-armored middle-aged man, and the others, but she still wanted to try. Beg us? Back in the Divine Kingdom, you didn't beg me because you were arrogant and didn't want to beg others. But now, for these irrelevant outsiders, you actually lowered your head and begged me? When the Dragon God Sword heard this, he was furious. The princess of the Divine Kingdom sighed. As long as you can leave and don't hurt the people of the Sky Cloud realm, I will kneel down. Then kneel before me. Because you really should kneel down and apologize for what you have done and repent. The Dragon God Sword was furious. The golden-armored middle-aged man, and the others were also disappointed. It had been so many years, but they didn't expect the princess to be so stubborn. The princess of the Divine Kingdom looked at the Dragon God Sword, the golden-armored middle-aged man, and the others and said with a smile, If I can let you leave by kneeling, then what's the harm in kneeling? After saying that, she knelt in the void. Chapter 3, Release at 10. Chapter 38-81. Princess, you can't. An old man's expression changed slightly as he hurriedly ran toward the princess of the Divine Kingdom. Get out of my way. Make her kneel. The Divine Dragon Sword shouted. The old man's body trembled as he quickly stopped. He looked at the Divine Dragon Sword in fear and said anxiously, She's a princess. How can she kneel to us? She betrayed her family, her people, and the people of the Divine Kingdom. She's no longer the princess of the Divine Kingdom. She's a sinner. The Divine Dragon Sword snorted. Hearing this, the old man looked at the princess of the Divine Kingdom again, and couldn't help but sigh. Although he really wanted to help, he really didn't know what to say in the face of the facts in front of him. Boom. Just as the princess of the Divine Kingdom was about to kneel, Qin Feiyang appeared with his 3,000 clones. 5,000 years in one day. The 3,000 clones had already replicated the two ultimate intents of the Blood Ancestor in the Black Tortoise realm. The reason he hadn't come out was actually because Qin Feiyang also hoped that the princess of the Divine Kingdom could persuade the Divine Dragon Sword and the middle-aged man to retreat. However, after watching for so long, not only was the princess of the Divine Kingdom not persuaded to retreat, but she was even forced to kneel? How could he tolerate this? So he really did appear with his 3,000 clones to stop the princess of the Divine Kingdom. Leave it to me. The princess of the divine kingdom looked at Qin Feiyang with a hint of pleading in her eyes. It's useless. Even if you really kneel, they won't retreat. Because in their eyes, you've already betrayed them. You should leave this matter to me. Qin Feiyang sighed. But the princess of the divine kingdom was extremely anxious. I know that you don't want any of us to be injured, but there are some things that we must face. Qin Feiyang then grabbed the princess of the divine kingdom and retreated to the side. Looking at the 3,000 clones, his blood-red eyes flashed coldly as he shouted, "Kill them!" Boom! The 3,000 clones cackled. 6,000 ultimates crazily attacked the divine dragon sword, the middle-aged man in golden armor, and the others. Bastard! We'll settle this score another day. The divine dragon sword roared and immediately swept up the golden-armored middle-aged man and the others and flew away. This was not one of the 6 ultimate profound meanings, nor were they the ultimate profundities of the 6,000 ordinary laws. These were the ultimate profundities of a total of 6,000 ultimate laws of nature. The ultimate profundity of each ultimate law was equivalent to a sovereign weapon. In other words, now there were 6,000 sovereign weapons. Even though the divine dragon sword was a high-grade dominator divine weapon, it could only flee in the face of such a terrifying lineup. Where are you going? The 3,000 clones seemed to have expected this. They instantly spread out and surrounded the divine dragon sword, the middle-aged man in golden armor, and the others. The 6,000 ultimate profound surged forward. Rumble. Crack. A series of loud blasts took place. What followed was a series of painful screams. The golden-armored middle-aged man and his men were instantly killed. Not to mention them, even the divine dragon sword could not withstand the aura of 6,000 ultimate profound meanings. A sense of despair shrouded their hearts. The princess of the divine kingdom could not bear to see this scene. She looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Qin, ancestor, I'm Qin Xiaotian now." Qin Feiyang laughed secretly. The princess of the divine kingdom was stunned and said anxiously, "Don't care what you're called. For my sake, let them go." "Let them go?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Yes." The princess of the divine kingdom nodded. Qin Feiyang said, "But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Please understand my feelings. Although I've left the divine kingdom, I'm still a citizen of the divine kingdom. Give me some time, and give them some time. I believe that I can persuade them," the princess of the divine kingdom said. Qin Feiyang looked at the pleading ancestor, and then at the destroyed divine dragon sword and the middle-aged man in golden armor. His face was full of struggle. If he let the divine dragon sword and the middle-aged man in golden armor go, it would be like letting a tiger return to the mountain. But he could not ignore the ancestors' pleading. What should he do? If you kill them now and destroy the divine dragon sword, you will definitely enrage my father. You've activated 3,000 incarnations, and the Eye of Heaven. It's indeed very powerful. But the Feather Emperor should not have told you that the 3,000 incarnations are actually from the Divine Kingdom. The princess of the Divine Kingdom said. What? The 3,000 incarnations are from the Divine Kingdom? Qin Feiyang was shocked. That's right. The princess of the Divine Kingdom nodded. No wonder they know the 3,000 incarnations. Qin Feiyang murmured. The 3,000 incarnations are a secret of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan. It means that apart from the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan, no one is qualified to cultivate it. Moreover, even in the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan, only the direct descendants can cultivate it. I don't know the current situation, but in the past, there were 3 people who cultivated the 3,000 incarnations. The first was my father, the second was me, and the third was my elder brother. You can imagine. If you really kill them now and destroy the Divine Dragon Sword and enrage my father and elder brother will personally descend on the Sky Cloud Realm. Can you imagine what kind of crisis the Sky Cloud Realm will face? The princess of the Divine Kingdom said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang's face turned pale when he heard this. Who knew the power of the 3,000 incarnations better than him? If the father and elder brother of the princess of the Divine Kingdom really descended, it would be a catastrophe for the Sky Cloud Realm. Moreover, The number of people in the divine kingdom who have mastered the ultimate law is far more than the sky cloud realm. Even if my father and elder brother do not come personally, as long as they send enough experts, they can kill you. The princess of the divine kingdom said in a deep voice. When Qin Feiyang heard this, he made a prompt decision and nodded to the 3,000 incarnations. The 3,000 incarnations waved their hands, and the ultimate law instantly dissipated. At this moment, the divine dragon sword had been shattered. Even more than half of its original body had been obliterated. The thunder battle armor and thunder battle axe that were already broken were even more tragic. As for the middle-aged man in golden armor and the others, they were only left with the last trace of their souls. This was still because of the protection of the divine dragon sword, otherwise they would have been destroyed. Qin Feiyang looked at the divine dragon sword, and a light flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, "For the sake of your princess, I can let you go, but I have a condition." Condition? The divine dragon sword's heart suddenly surged with anger. Who do you think you are to be qualified to negotiate with me? However, now it didn't dare to say it out loud. The princess of the divine kingdom couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyang in confusion. What was this kid up to again? Qin Feiyang sneered. If you don't agree, then even if the heavenly king comes down, he won't be able to save you today. He had already thought about it. Although the Lord of the Divine Kingdom also had 3,000 incarnations, he actually had the upper hand, because he still had the Eye of Heaven. Of course, he also couldn't feel confident that he could defeat the Divine Kingdom just because he had the Eye of Heaven. After all, as the Princess of the Divine Kingdom said, the Divine Kingdom still had a large number of experts who had mastered the ultimate profound of the strongest law. If the Divine Kingdom were to come out in full force, he wouldn't be able to do it alone. So now he had to solve this problem from the root. What condition? Suddenly, a dignified yet ethereal voice sounded. Father. The princess of the Divine Kingdom trembled. What? The Lord of the Divine Kingdom. Qin Feiyang's expression changed as he glanced around. However, as far as the eye could see, there was no one at all. Swish. Suddenly, a light shadow swept out from the broken sword body of the dragon god sword, and floated in the void in front of Qin Feiyang. It was a blurry and almost transparent figure. Even so, it was as if the ruler of heaven and earth had descended. The void, the sky, and the sea here were all trembling. Greetings, Father. The princess of the Divine Kingdom looked at the figure with tears in her eyes. This was her biological father. How could she not miss him after not seeing him for so many years? Ah. The Lord of the Divine Kingdom looked at the princess of the Divine Kingdom for a long time and sighed deeply. I thought you had lived a happy life in the sky cloud realm all these years, but in the end, you have been sealed until now. Is this the life you want? As a father, how could he not miss his children? Although this daughter betrayed him and the Divine Kingdom, blood was thicker than water. Therefore, this time, when he came to the sky cloud realm and learned that his daughter was sealed in the land of buried gods, he was both distressed and angry. It could be said that his heart was suffering. The life I want. The princess of the Divine Kingdom smiled sadly and shook her head. My husband is dead. The life I want has been destroyed, but I don't regret it. The human emperor is dead? The Lord of the Divine Kingdom was stunned. Yes. The princess of the Divine Kingdom nodded. How did he die? The Lord of the Divine Kingdom was suspicious. He was attacked by Feng Ho, the Qilin Master, and the Dragon King. Back then, I destroyed the gate of the Divine Kingdom and forced you to leave the sky cloud realm. I thought that from then on, I could live a carefree life with my husband. But I didn't expect that Feng Ho and the other two would attack us while we were weak. Unfortunately, my husband died, and the Feather Emperor was forced to leave the sky cloud realm. He even forced the Blood Ancestor to reincarnate. As for me, although I escaped, as you can see, I have been sealed until now. The princess of the Divine Kingdom sighed. On the side, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but clench his hands. Although he already knew these things at this moment, when he heard the princess of the Divine Kingdom say it herself, the anger in his heart couldn't be restrained. Because he could clearly feel the despair, bitterness, grievance, and grief in the heart of the princess of the Divine Kingdom. And all of this was caused by Feng Ho, the Dragon King and the Qilin Master. How ridiculous! You sacrificed so much for the Sky Cloud Realm, but in the end, you received such treatment. Now tell me, are you stupid? The Lord of the Divine Kingdom was heartbroken. He thought that his daughter was living a happy life here, but in the end, all she suffered was grievance. Although some people betrayed me. Speaking of this, the Princess of the Divine Kingdom looked at Qin Feiyang with a trace of affection on her face and smiled. But there are also people who care about me. I don't regret it. The Lord of the Divine Kingdom couldn't help but size up Qin Feiyang. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed and he said in a deep voice, "You actually have the bloodline power of the purple gold dragon blood." Sure enough, blood is thicker than water. Qin Feiyang sighed inwardly. Chapter 3882. Father, please calm down. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom turned pale. This was what she was most worried about, because she knew her father's character too well. Once he knew that Qin Feiyang had the purple gold dragon blood, he would definitely destroy Qin Feiyang by hook or by crook, especially when Qin Feiyang was still a human being. For her father, no. For the entire purple gold divine dragon clan. A human possessing the purple gold dragon blood was a humiliation to the purple gold divine dragon. The remnant souls of the dragon god sword and the middle-aged man in golden armor also looked at Qin Feiyang in shock when they heard the words of the king of the divine kingdom. The bloodline power of the purple gold dragon blood. Didn't this mean that this person was the son of the princess and the human emperor? Don't worry. Qin Feiyang comforted the princess of the divine kingdom. He also clearly felt the murderous intent of the king of the divine kingdom. However, it was useless to panic now. He could only act according to the situation. The king of the divine kingdom looked at the princess of the divine kingdom and asked, "He is the son of you and the human emperor?" I. The princess of the divine kingdom was extremely flustered. Qin Feiyang stood in front of the princess of the divine kingdom, looked straight at the king of the divine kingdom, and said lightly, "Don't worry about my bloodline power. Let's talk about our conditions first. You are not afraid of death?" The king of the divine kingdom looked at Qin Feiyang, and his tone was cold. "Who is not afraid of death? But what's the use of being afraid? If I say I am afraid, will you leave the Sky Cloud realm and return our peace? Let's talk about it later. If I hadn't shown mercy earlier, the divine dragon sword and your subordinates would have been completely annihilated." Qin Feiyang was fearless. The king of the divine kingdom standing in front of him was just a consciousness. He was not a threat at all. "You have guts." As expected of the descendant of the purple gold divine dragon. The king of the divine kingdom laughed, and there seemed to be some appreciation in his words. "Feiyang, you must be careful. Don't be fooled by my father's words." Although he expressed his admiration, it doesn't mean that he won't kill you. The princess of the divine kingdom reminded him secretly. "All right." Qin Feiyang responded. Looking at the king of the divine kingdom, he said calmly, "Actually, my conditions are nothing to you. Why don't you listen to me first?" "All right. Go ahead." The king of the divine kingdom nodded. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and he said in a deep voice, "The older generation shouldn't interfere. Let the younger generation compete." The king of the divine kingdom was stunned. The princess of the divine kingdom was also stunned. And then her eyes were filled with admiration. That's right. The older generation of the divine kingdom was not only large in number, but each one of them was extremely powerful. If they were to attack, the Sky Cloud realm would have no chance of winning. This was because in the older generation of the Sky Cloud realm, other than the Feather Emperor, the Blood Ancestor, the Little Rabbit, and the Dragon King, none of them were worthy of being mentioned. As for the younger generation, the young geniuses of the Divine Kingdom would definitely surpass the Sky Cloud realm. However, the Sky Cloud realm had several geniuses, and she believed that these geniuses could definitely suppress the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom. For example, Qin Feiyang, the Madman, the White-Eyed Wolf, and Fire Dance. Then there were Long Chun, Yun Xiang Li Feng, the Mas de Jura, and so on. After the experience of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, these young geniuses had grown up and were capable of shouldering this heavy responsibility. especially Long Chen. As the son of the ice dragon, he must have amazing means. As for Qin Feiyang, although she didn't know how strong Qin Feiyang was now, since Qin Feiyang dared to put forward this condition, he must be confident. She believed in Qin Feiyang. Seeing that the king of the divine kingdom didn't speak for a long time, Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Don't tell me you don't have confidence in the younger generation of the divine kingdom. King, don't be provoked by his words. With the strength of our divine kingdom, we don't need to play such childish games with them." The golden-armored middle-aged man's remnant soul hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang laughed. "What are you laughing at?" The golden-armored middle-aged man's remnant soul said angrily. Qin Feiyang said, "If you really have the strength, what are you afraid of?" "Afraid? What a joke. I just feel that this is purely a waste of time." The golden-armored middle-aged man sneered. "Don't be so proud. The younger generation of the Sky Cloud realm isn't bad. In the end, it's still unknown who will be the stronger one. If you are really confident, you might as well try. Of course, if you don't want to, I can't force you. But when the time comes, I'm afraid there will be people talking behind your back. Your divine kingdom is now in a state of disarray. Apart from the older generation, there aren't many in the younger generation who can be brought up to the stage." Qin Feiyang pursed his lips with a hint of sarcasm. "You." As soon as these words came out, not only the golden-armored middle-aged men, but even the divine dragon sword couldn't help but fly into a rage out of humiliation. What I said made no sense. Qin Feiyang laughed. The group was so angry that they were about to go crazy. Haha. The king of the divine kingdom suddenly laughed and nodded. Not only do you have courage, but you also have courage and confidence that others don't have. It really suits the nature of our purple gold divine dragon. Don't keep talking about the purple gold divine dragon. My nature comes from me, and it has nothing to do with your purple gold divine dragon. To be honest, I really don't believe that everyone in your purple gold divine dragon clan is more courageous than others. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. He said it as if everything he had now was brought about by the purple gold dragon blood. The purple gold dragon blood had indeed brought him a lot of benefits. This was undeniable. But if a person didn't work hard, what was the use of having the best bloodline power? Take the dragons, the Feng people, and the Kirin clan for example. Their bloodline power wasn't bad, but how many of them had become successful in the end? So, the bloodline power was at most icing on the cake. Fundamentally, one still had to rely on oneself. Hearing this, the king of the divine kingdom raised his eyebrows and said, "Is it so difficult for you to admit the nobility of the purple gold dragon blood? I never thought that the purple gold dragon blood was so noble. I have never thought that I am superior just because I have the purple gold dragon blood. In my opinion, people who have such thoughts are just deceiving themselves. Don't go too far. Please consider my condition carefully. If you don't want to, we can always hide in the Nether King's hell." Qin Feiyang said lightly. "Do you think it's safe to hide in the Nether King's hell?" The middle-aged man's remnant soul sneered. "Are you trying to scare me? Are you stupid, or do you think I am stupid? If you have the ability to enter the Nether King's hell, would you wait until now?" Qin Feiyang sneered. "You." The middle-aged man's remnant soul was a little angry from embarrassment. The king of the divine kingdom waved his hand, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Well, as you wish. I will give this battlefield to the younger generation of the divine kingdom and the Sky Cloud realm." Qin Feiyang was overjoyed when he heard this. "However, I also have a condition," the king of the divine kingdom said again. Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked suspiciously, "What condition?" "First, bring me the heads of the Dragon King, Feng Ho and the Kirin clan. Since you dared to seal my daughter, you have to pay the price. Secondly, you only have 1,000 years. If the younger generation of the Sky Cloud realm can't suppress the geniuses of the divine kingdom within 1,000 years, then prepare to face destruction," the king of the divine kingdom said. Qin Feiyang frowned. 1,000 years was not enough. However, he could see that this was the limit of the king of the divine kingdom. "Okay." After hesitating for a while, Qin Feiyang nodded, looked at the king of the divine kingdom, and said, However, I have another condition. The Dominator divine weapon cannot interfere. This could not be ignored. Otherwise, when the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom arrived with the Dragon God Sword, would there be any chance of winning? There would never be. Since this is a fair competition, it will naturally test everyone's true ability. Therefore, I agree with this point. The King of the Divine Kingdom nodded. Then it's a deal. Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. No matter what, they had avoided this catastrophe for the time being. Although it was only 1,000 years, it was better than not even a day. It's a deal. The King of the Divine Kingdom nodded, and his eyes fell on the Princess of the Divine Kingdom. After pondering for a long time, he sighed and said, "The human emperor is dead. What's the point of you staying in the Sky Cloud realm? Why don't you come back with me now? As long as you sincerely repent, everyone will still accept you." Hearing this, the Princess of the Divine Kingdom's expression stiffened. Qin Feiyang glanced at the Princess of the Divine Kingdom and said, "Ancestor, I respect your choice." Who didn't want to return to their homeland? For example, no matter how wonderful the outside world was, Great Qin was always the place he cared about the most in his heart. Therefore, he could understand the Princess of the Divine Kingdom's feelings. If the Divine Kingdom really wouldn't make things difficult for the Princess of the Divine Kingdom, he would agree with it. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom glanced at Qin Feiyang, and then at the King of the Divine Kingdom. After a long time, she shook her head and said, "There are too many things I can't let go of here. I don't want to leave." "How many years have you been in the Sky Cloud realm? If you can't let go of them, then can you let go of the Divine Kingdom, your family, your people, and your people?" The King of the Divine Kingdom was furious when he heard this. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom fell into silence again. Finally, she gritted her teeth and said, "If Father can promise me that you will never invade the Sky Cloud realm again, I will go back with you now." "Are you threatening me?" The King of the Divine Kingdom raised his eyebrows. "I dare not." The Princess of the Divine Kingdom quickly lowered her head. "Good. Very good." The King of the Divine Kingdom nodded repeatedly. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Within 3 days, I want to see the heads of Dragon King and the others. Also, although I love my daughter very much, I will never allow any human to taint the power of my purple gold divine dragon bloodline." "Do you want me to destroy the power of my bloodline?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. "If you can destroy the power of your bloodline, that would be for the best, so that I won't have to do it myself. But if you don't want to, then I'm afraid you will have to bear very serious consequences in the end. Do as you see fit." After the King of the Divine Kingdom finished speaking, his consciousness dissipated directly. "Count yourselves lucky this time." The Dragon God Sword snorted coldly and immediately took the remnant souls of the middle-aged man in golden armor, and the others away at lightning speed. Whoosh! Seeing the Dragon God Sword disappear at the end of the sea, the Princess of the Divine Kingdom and Qin Feiyang looked at each other, and were completely relieved. Chapter 3883. The Black Tortoise Realm. Qin Feiyang took off his mask, and his blood-red hair and eyes returned to normal. The Feather Emperor said worriedly, "Feiyang, are you confident in 1,000 years?" Before Qin Feiyang left, he left a recording of what happened outside, so the Feather Emperor, Little Rabbit, Blood Ancestor, and Long Chun were all in the Black Tortoise realm and witnessed the whole process. "I haven't even seen a single genius of the Divine Kingdom. How can I be confident?" Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. This was just a delaying tactic. He would delay as long as he could. Hearing this, the Feather Emperor, Little Rabbit, and Blood Ancestor looked at each other, and then at Long Chun. "Why are you looking at me?" Long Chun was suspicious. Blood Ancestor laughed. "You have the strongest backing here. At the critical moment, of course, we have to count on you." Long Chun was speechless. "It's not like you don't know my situation. Count on me? I still want to follow you. If Ice Dragon wants to help, we don't need to find him. He will do it, but if he doesn't want to, it's useless even if we kneel and beg him. So we shouldn't have too much hope for him. 1,000 years is neither long nor short. You don't have to be too nervous." The problem we have to solve now is Dragon King and the other two. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. He was certainly willing to kill Dragon King and the other two, but after all, the Feather Emperor and other seniors were present. Naturally, he had to ask for their permission first. Dragon King and the other two deserve to die. Now that we can contribute to the Sky Cloud realm, it can be considered as accumulating some merit for the next generation in advance. Blood Ancestor sneered. I don't have any objections. Besides, we have no choice now. Feather Emperor shook his head. The reason why he hadn't killed Dragon King and the other two was that he thought that when facing the Divine Kingdom in the future, one more person would be one more force. But now, the Lord of the Divine Nation had specifically asked for their heads. What else could they do? For the Sky Cloud realm, they could only be sacrificed. Seeing that the Feather Emperor and the Blood Ancestor had no objections, Qin Feiyang looked at Long Chun. Whatever. Long Chun shrugged. Truth? Qin Feiyang asked. What do you think? Long Chun asked. All right. Let's go to hell right now and take their lives. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with killing intent. Let's not do it in the Underworld King's hell. If they become desperate and harm the creatures of the Underworld King's hell, I'll have to trouble myself to bring them to the Sky Cloud realm. Long Chun shook his head. Qin Feiyang looked at Long Chun, his eyes flickering. What is it? Are you still worried about me? Long Chun asked with a smile. No. However, I'm worried that you won't be able to intimidate them if you go alone. Therefore, I think it's better for the old ancestor to accompany you. Qin Feiyang smiled. As long as you're happy. Long Chun smiled faintly. With the Heavenly God Sword, how could he not intimidate the Dragon King trio? This guy had an ulterior motive. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice to the Blood Ancestor. Old Ancestor, keep an eye on him. Don't let him play any tricks. The Blood Ancestor secretly responded. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent the two out. Are you guarding against Long Chen? Feather Emperor asked. I have to be wary of him. Qin Feiyang sighed. This was a reliable teammate, but at the same time, he was also a frightening opponent. The little rabbit asked. Then, should we continue to let everyone stay in the Underworld King's hell? Staying in the Underworld King's hell is indeed safer, but because of the restrictions of the rules, it's difficult for everyone to improve their cultivation. Feather Emperor shook his head. Then, the little rabbit scanned the Black Tortoise realm. Big brother, don't have any ideas about the Black Tortoise realm. This place can't be compared to the Skycloud realm. It can't hold so many creatures. Qin Feiyang hurriedly shook his head. If they squeezed, it was still possible. However, he really didn't want to destroy the peace of the Black Tortoise realm, because once the creatures of the Skycloud realm entered the Black Tortoise realm, they would inevitably fall into chaos. But we can't let them stay in the Underworld King's hell forever. The little rabbit frowned. Indeed we can't. Why don't we let them return to the Skycloud realm? In any case, haven't we already fought for 1,000 years of peace for them? Qin Feiyang said. A mere 1,000 years will pass in the blink of an eye. Feather Emperor shook his head and sighed. Everyone needs to grow. We can't always protect them. What's the difference between that and a flower in a greenhouse? Moreover, to contend against the Divine Kingdom, we alone are far from enough. We need the entire Skycloud realm to work together. In short, no one can stay out of it. Qin Feiyang said. That's fine too. Let everyone return. Everything will return to its original state. Perhaps there will be a turn for the better in less than 1,000 years? The Feather Emperor smiled. If there really is a turn for the better, that would naturally be the best. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Then, he looked up at the sky and shouted, Little brat, let the God-slaying tablet come out and undergo the tribulation. Clang. Accompanied by a loud sound, the God-slaying tablet fell from the sky. A vast divine aura instantly enveloped the devil's land. At the same time, tribulation clouds were rolling in the sky. Wait a moment. Don't undergo the tribulation here. Qin Feiyang's expression changed. He immediately took the God-slaying tablet, the little rabbit, and the Feather Emperor and left the Black Tortoise realm. Don't undergo the tribulation in the heavenly cloud sea. The little rabbit roared. Then where should we go? Qin Feiyang asked. Go to the land of the buried gods. Anyway, that place has already been destroyed. The little rabbit waved its paw and opened a space-time tunnel. The three of them immediately took the god-slaying tablet and descended in the sky above the core area of the land of the buried gods. The gate to the divine kingdom was at the peak of the sky. The little rabbit rolled its eyes and said with a sneaky smile, Do you think we can borrow the power of the god-slaying tablet's tribulation to destroy the gate to the divine kingdom? Qin Feiyang and the Feather Emperor looked at each other. It might work. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and he said with a smile, The god-slaying tablet should be here. How troublesome. The god-slaying tablet spoke. Its voice sounded a little childish, like an 8 or 9-year-old child. You think it's troublesome? Whose tribulation is this? Qin Feiyang's face darkened. The god-slaying tablet said angrily, Kid, don't be arrogant. Be careful. When this sovereign undergoes the tribulation, you will be the first to be suppressed. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Although the god-slaying tablet had been in the Black Tortoise realm for a long time, this was his first time interacting with it. This first impression was not good. Fine. Consider me a busybody. If you can, don't ask us for help later. Old ancestor, big brother, let's retreat. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. Then he left with the Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit without even looking back. Don't go. Why are you so stingy? The god-slaying tablet hurriedly shouted. Don't go. Stay here and wait for death. You're on your own. Qin Feiyang said without looking back. You have no loyalty. The god-slaying tablet scolded. Rumble. Crack. In the sky, blood clouds rolled in and instantly covered the entire sky above the core area. Clang. However, at the same time, the gate to the divine kingdom, which was floating at the peak of the sky, instantly descended in the sky above the central region. Qin Feiyang, the Feather Emperor, and the little rabbit looked at this scene in shock. They originally wanted to use the power of the tribulation to destroy the gate to the divine kingdom. However, they did not expect the gate to be so cunning and run faster than them. Chapter 3. Release at 10 a.m. Chapter 38-84. However, it could be seen from this point. The sovereign weapon's heavenly tribulation could indeed threaten the door of the divine kingdom. Otherwise, why would it run? Boom. As the first heavenly tribulation descended, the entire land of buried gods was shrouded in a terrifying heavenly might. Qin Feiyang, Feather Emperor, and Little Rabbit stood in the sky above the inner region. Feeling the terrifying heavenly might, they decisively opened the portal again and appeared in the sky above the central region. They were quite knowledgeable, especially Qin Feiyang. He had undergone more than 1 or 2 heavenly tribulations. When he was in the Chaos Royal City, he saw the undead tribulations every day. But this time, the god-slaying tablet's heavenly tribulation was more terrifying than any he had seen before. Even the undead tribulations couldn't be compared to this heavenly tribulation. Even though he was in the central region, he could feel a fatal danger. Crack! When the first heavenly tribulation descended, the god-slaying tablet shattered. So cruel. The god-slaying tablet panicked. It knew that the sovereign weapon's heavenly tribulation was terrifying, but it didn't expect it to be this terrifying. This was only the first heavenly tribulation. After that, there were a total of 98 heavenly tribulations. How could it succeed? Brother Qin, Boss Qin, Qin Dage, Uncle Qin. Don't leave me to die. Come and help. The god-slaying tablet couldn't help but roar hysterically due to the fear in its heart. Ancestor, big brother, what should we do? Qin Feiyang looked at Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit. Needless to say, these sovereign weapons in the castle couldn't help at all. Moreover, his sovereign weapons, Fire Dance's sovereign weapons, and the land of buried gods' sovereign weapons had all been damaged when they fought with the divine dragon sword. Although the sovereign weapons in the hands of the beast emperors were still intact, they were far from enough. The only thing we can do now is use your 3,000 incarnations and the Eye of Heaven to help it, Feather Emperor said in a low voice. Then we have to enter the central region. Qin Feiyang frowned. Yes. There's no other way. I'm afraid that even Long Chen's heavenly god sword won't be able to block all of the heavenly tribulations. Furthermore, Long Chen isn't here right now. Even if he were, he wouldn't be obligated to help the god-slaying tablet overcome its tribulation. Feather Emperor shook his head. Then let's do it. Qin Feiyang gritted his teeth. It hadn't been easy for him to nurture a sovereign weapon. He couldn't allow it to be destroyed by the heavenly tribulation. Crack. While they were talking, the second heavenly tribulation descended. The god-slaying tablet shattered into pieces. The little rabbit opened a space-time tunnel. While the third heavenly tribulation was brewing, it descended into the core region. I knew you were the best. The god-slaying tablet immediately shouted. Stop flattering me. Qin Feiyang glared at it and decisively brought the Feather Emperor and the little rabbit into the ancient castle. They appeared in the sky above the blood sea of the western regions. His long hair and eyes instantly turned blood-red, and a blood-red mask condensed once again, which he wore on his face. The gate of the divine kingdom was still watching from above. Therefore, he still had to use the identity of Qin Xiaotian to help. As for coming to the blood sea of the western regions, of course, it was to prevent innocent creatures from being hurt when replicating the ultimate profound meaning. After all, the ultimate profound meaning wasn't a joke. If it was in the land of the devils, the aura emitted by replicating thousands of ultimate profound meanings would be enough to raise the land of the devils to the ground. Big brother, activate your ultimate profound meaning. Then Qin Feiyang looked at the little rabbit and chuckled. Don't you have it yourself? The little rabbit looked at him. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Who are you kidding? Since returning from the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, you haven't been willing to show your strength. What do you mean? The little rabbit raised its eyebrows. Nothing. Hurry up. The third heavenly tribulation is about to descend. It's too late to wait. Qin Feiyang urged. The little rabbit rolled its eyes at him and immediately activated two ultimate profound meanings. They were the space-time laws and the time laws. That's it. Qin Feiyang was stunned. The blood ancestor once said that when the little rabbit was in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, it had obtained the inheritance of two ultimate laws. In addition, after so many years, it was impossible for this guy to only have two ultimate profound meanings. Yes, that's it. What's the matter? The little rabbit snorted. Nothing. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly. Needless to say, this little rabbit must be holding back. He activated 3,000 clones and began to replicate. In the blink of an eye, outside, the third heavenly tribulation descended. Heartless bastard, just you wait. I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Seeing that Qin Feiyang didn't appear for a long time, the god-slaying tablet thought that he had abandoned it and immediately cursed. Really? If you say so, then I'll really leave. With a cold snort, Qin Feiyang appeared with 3,000 clones. Don't. I'm talking about Feather Emperor and the others, not you. The god-slaying tablet smiled flatteringly. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and transmitted his voice. Call me Qin Feiyang now. Don't call me Qin Feiyang. Okay. The god-slaying tablet said to itself. Qin Feiyang looked up at the heavenly tribulation with a serious expression. The 3,000 clones leaped up and crossed the sky above the god-slaying tablet. Then 6,000 ultimate profound meanings soared into the sky and formed a huge shield wall that separated heaven and earth. Boom. The heavenly tribulation bombarded. The three ultimate profound meanings were instantly shattered. But the heavenly tribulation was successfully blocked. However, the power was indeed shocking. The power of one heavenly tribulation actually shattered three ultimate profound meanings. One had to know. Each ultimate profound meaning was comparable to a sovereign divine weapon. It was really fortunate that he didn't ask the sovereign divine weapon to help. Otherwise, the sovereign divine weapon would have been fatally injured. Fortunately, he had replicated 6,000 ultimate profound meanings. The number was large enough to block all the heavenly tribulations. Boom. At this moment, in the central region, at the gate of the divine kingdom, a middle-aged man walked out. He was about 30 years old and about 1.8 meters tall. He wore a purple gold robe. His eyebrows were like swords and his aura was monstrous. Heavenly tribulation? As soon as this person appeared, he looked at the sky of the core region and frowned slightly. Immediately after, he waved his hand and a space-time tunnel appeared. Before entering the space-time tunnel, he glanced at the mountains and rivers below and muttered, "Blood Demon King, I'm here again. Unfortunately, you're already dead. This time, I'd like to see who else can stop me." The core region. Qin Feiyang was paying attention to the 3,000 clones. But suddenly, he felt something and turned to look at the sky above the core region. He saw a space-time tunnel appear. Was it Long Chun? The next moment, when the man from the Divine Kingdom walked out, Qin Feiyang's pupils suddenly shrank. It's him. Black Tortoise World. Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit were also paying attention to the situation outside through the image in the void. When they saw the man from the Divine Kingdom appear in the image, their eyes suddenly trembled. A strong killing intent emerged uncontrollably. Feiyang, it was him who led the Divine Kingdom's army to invade the Nether King's hell. The Blood Demon King died in his hands. Feather Emperor transmitted. What? Qin Feiyang's body trembled. As expected, there are 3,000 clones. The man from the Divine Kingdom looked at the 3,000 clones and murmured. His eyes fell on Qin Feiyang and asked, "You're Qin Xiaotian? You're the one who invaded the Nether King's hell back then?" Qin Feiyang asked. "Yes, it's me." The man from the Divine Kingdom didn't hide it at all and sneered. "I wonder if there are any blood demons alive now." Qin Feiyang clenched his hands and said in a deep voice, "You'll pay the price." "Price? What's that?" "I really don't know. But I heard that you're very strong. And you're the son of the princess and the human emperor. Let me have a taste of your strength." The man from the Divine Kingdom waved his hand. The space-time law roared out, and a river of stars suddenly descended from the sky. "You've already found out about me so quickly. It seems that you're quite concerned about me. However, the Lord of the Divine Kingdom has already promised me that the older generation can't fight. Are you going to defy the order of the Lord of the Divine Kingdom?" Qin Feiyang said. "It's just a spar." "Why? Now that your 3,000 clones are restrained by the heavenly tribulation, you don't even have the courage to spar with me?" The man from the Divine Kingdom sneered. "Feiyang, let me out. This bastard, I've long wanted to kill him to avenge the blood demons." Feather Emperor transmitted. "Do you need to deal with such a small character?" Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Don't underestimate him. Besides, this is a feud between the older generation. Why are you, a young man, interfering? Just focus on helping the god-slaying tablet transcend the heavenly tribulation." Feather Emperor was displeased. "Fine." Qin Feiyang was helpless. With a thought, Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit came out. When enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. Not only Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit, but when the man from the Divine Kingdom saw Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit appear, his eyes were filled with killing intent. He sneered and said, "You two old farts are really lucky. Aren't you the same?" After saying that, Feather Emperor took a step into the sky. A shocking force of death immediately surged out. The ultimate profound, 18 layers of hell, appeared in an instant. "Not bad. I remember that back then, you only mastered the ultimate profound of the law of nothingness." Killing intent flashed in the eyes of the man from the Divine Kingdom. The river of stars fell, and everything was destroyed. Accompanied by a loud noise, the two ultimate profound collided violently. At this moment, the man from the Divine Kingdom and Feather Emperor attacked each other at the same time. Although they said it was a spar, each of their attacks was fatal. Below, Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked at Little Rabbit and asked, "Ancestor, have you mastered the ultimate profound of the law of nothingness?" "Yes. The ultimate profound of the law of sword and the law of death were comprehended by him in recent years." Little Rabbit nodded. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. As expected, not only the Dragon King, but also Feng Ho, the Qilin Master, and everyone else were growing. However, what about the human sovereign? Blood Ancestor and Feather Emperor had both returned. The Blood Demon Lord might also be reincarnated. Although the crazy man knew now, he didn't tell Qin Feiyang. So, Qin Feiyang wasn't sure whether the crazy man was the reincarnation of the blood demon lord or not. Everyone returned one after another. Did the human sovereign really die? Chapter 3885. Hundreds of breaths passed. More than half of the god-slaying tablet's tribulation had passed. No matter what kind of tribulation it was, they all had one thing in common. Each one was stronger than the last. Now, one tribulation was enough to shatter dozens of ultimate mysteries. This was equivalent to dozens of sovereign weapons. From this, one could see, if not for the 3,000 incarnations and the Eye of Heaven, even with the help of hundreds of sovereign weapons, the god-slaying tablet wouldn't be able to pass the tribulation. No wonder there were so few sovereign weapons in the Sky Cloud realm. Without anyone's help, only a miracle would allow one to survive such a heavenly tribulation. Did the castle pass a tribulation back then? Suddenly, Little Rabbit looked at Qin Feiyang and asked. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. After the castle merged with the Black Tortoise realm, it evolved into a sovereign weapon as the Black Tortoise realm grew. It seems that I don't have to worry about the castle in the future. Little Rabbit muttered. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. The castle was different from other sovereign weapons. Other sovereign weapons needed to absorb the world's origin energy to grow, and the growth was quite slow. But the castle was different. As the Black Tortoise realm grew, the castle would grow with it. The two complemented each other. It was a good thing that there was no tribulation. After all, now that the god-slaying tablet's tribulation was so terrifying, it would be even more terrifying when it evolved into a mid-level, or even a high-level sovereign weapon. However, as the Black Tortoise realm grew bigger, its growth seemed to be slower and slower. It seemed that he had to collect more crystal veins and spirit veins to accelerate the growth of the Black Tortoise realm. This way, the castle could evolve into a mid-level sovereign weapon faster. At that time, the castle, the flame magic sword, two mid-level sovereign weapons, facing the Divine Kingdom's experts, he had more confidence. On the other side, the Feather Emperor and the man from the Divine Kingdom had already killed their way out of the core area and entered the inner area. Everywhere they went, the sky fell and the earth cracked. Dust and smoke billowed. It was like the end of the world. Both of them were bleeding profusely, but their injuries didn't seem to be important to them at all. There was only killing intent in their eyes. Eastern Continent. Outside the entrance of the land of the buried gods, 5 figures stood against the wind, looking at the inner area and the core area. It was Long Chun, the Blood Ancestor, and the Dragon King. This aura, the Blood Ancestor stared at the inner region and clenched his fists tightly. What is it? Long Chun was suspicious. It's him. The Blood Ancestor's eyes were filled with hatred. Him. Long Chun frowned. The Dragon King said, back then, it was this person who led the Divine Kingdom to invade the lower realm, causing the people of the underworld to be plunged into misery and suffering. I see. Long Chun nodded and looked at the Blood Ancestor. It seems that you really want to kill him? Of course. The killing intent in the Blood Ancestor's eyes was undisguised. Long Chun smiled and said, then why don't you help the Feather Emperor kill him? The Blood Ancestor was taken aback and turned to look at Long Chun. His eyes flashed as if he wanted to see through Long Chun. However, he discovered that the young man before him was as unfathomable as the ocean. Don't worry. I won't play any tricks. Long Chun smiled faintly. The Blood Ancestor secretly sneered. Who knew if he would play any tricks? In any case, this ancestor will keep an eye on you at all times. As for the Dragon King and the other two, they still didn't know what was going on. They also didn't know the conditions offered by the Lord of the Divine Kingdom, because when Long Chun and the Blood Ancestor went back to find them, they only said that they had something to discuss in the Sky Cloud realm. Sigh. Long Chun sighed helplessly, opened a teleportation channel, and led them to the core region. They're here. Qin Feiyang sensed their auras and turned his head to look. Yes. Long Chun nodded with a smile and rushed to Qin Feiyang's side. He looked up at the heavenly tribulation and said in surprise, what a terrifying heavenly tribulation. Qin Feiyang glanced at Long Chun and said, Ancestor, is there anything wrong with Long Chun? No. Keep an eye on him. The blood ancestor thought. That's good. Qin Feiyang breathed a sigh of relief. He was afraid that Long Chen would secretly do something to help the Dragon King, and the other two. Looking at Feng Ho and the other two. As soon as they arrived here, they looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Who was this person? Because Qin Feiyang was wearing a mask and changed his aura, they didn't recognize him for a while. Qin Feiyang noticed their eyes, turned to look at them, and took off his mask. It's you. Feng Ho's eyes suddenly flashed with hatred. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. He was wearing a mask again, but there was a trace of goodwill in the eyes of the Kirin Master and the Dragon King. This made Qin Feiyang quite surprised. One had to know. When they just returned from the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, the two hated him to the bone. However, whether it was goodwill or malice, it didn't matter now. For public or private reasons, the three of them must die. Boom. Another 100 breaths passed. The last heavenly tribulation descended. Not to mention the land of buried gods. Even the eastern and northern continents outside were shrouded by the terrifying heavenly might. Qin Feiyang and the others stood below and couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. If it weren't for the 3,000 incarnations standing in the sky blocking the heavenly might, just the aura at this moment was enough to seriously injure all of them. Should we retreat? Long Chen frowned. Qin Feiyang was silent, staring at the 3,000 incarnations. There were still more than 4,000 ultimate mysteries left. Although the power of the last heavenly tribulation was the sum of the previous 98 heavenly tribulations, more than 4,000 ultimate mysteries shouldn't be a problem to block this heavenly tribulation. Dragon King and the other two looked at this scene and were extremely shocked. Was this the complete Eye of Heaven? It could even replicate the ultimate mysteries of the strongest law. With these 3,000 incarnations and the Eye of Heaven, who in the Sky Cloud realm could be Qin Feiyang's opponent? Dragon King had indeed planned to reconcile with Qin Feiyang in his heart. After all now, Qin Feiyang had already expressed his position, and would always stand together with the Sky Cloud realm. Moreover, the Feather Emperor and the Blood Ancestor had returned one after another, and the Princess of the Divine Kingdom had also escaped. Qin Feiyang's backer had become even more powerful. Continuing to fight wouldn't benefit the dragons at all. But now, looking at the heaven-defying ability of the Eye of Heaven, Dragon King couldn't help but feel resentment in his heart, because the other half of the Eye of Heaven belonged to the Crown Prince of the Dragons. If the Crown Prince of the Dragons had defeated Qin Feiyang back then, and obtained Qin Feiyang's Eye of Heaven, then the dragons would be the ones rising now. Although the Crown Prince of the Dragons didn't have 3,000 incarnations, with the heaven-defying Eye of Heaven, he could still look down on the entire Sky Cloud realm. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the heavenly tribulation fell. The 3,000 incarnations smiled coldly, and more than 4,000 ultimate mysteries, carrying the power to destroy the heavens and earth, rushed into the sky, accompanied by an earth-shaking loud noise. The last heavenly tribulation was crushed as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Then more than 4,000 ultimate mysteries rushed into the sky. Suddenly, a big hole appeared in the sky. It could be said to be shocking as it directly pierced through the sky. Feng Ho and the other two trembled. Their faces, which were shrouded in divine light, were pale. This was Qin Feiyang's current strength? Terrifying. It was simply unparalleled. Haha. The God-slaying tablet laughed. Finally, it succeeded in transcending the tribulation. A golden cloud surged and bestowed blessings. The broken body of the God-slaying tablet was not only quickly repaired, but its aura also soared to the level of a sovereign divine weapon in an instant. A sovereign divine weapon was born. A smile also appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. Although there were many sovereign divine weapons around him now, a sovereign divine weapon that he had personally nurtured felt different. It was like his own child. However, this child in front of him seemed to be a little rebellious. God-slaying tablet, come to me. Feng Ho came back to her senses and stared at the God-slaying tablet. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Feng Ho. Did this woman not know the situation she was in now? She was still thinking about the God-slaying tablet. They still don't know that we are going to kill them. The blood ancestor secretly explained. No wonder. Qin Feiyang mumbled. Feng Ho. The god-slaying tablet, of course, recognized Feng Ho, because back then, it was in the Feng people. Furthermore, he was rather fearful of the Phoenix Empress. Even now, Feng Ho was a terrifying existence in its eyes, let alone back then. After all, Feng Ho had mastered 3 ultimate mysteries and was far more powerful than it. Hey. Don't forget who helped you transcend the tribulation. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. I know. The god-slaying tablet snorted impatiently and said indifferently, Feng Ho, I'm sorry, but I prefer to stay by that girl's side. The so-called girl was naturally referring to Huowu. It had always been in the land of origin and didn't know about the feud between Huowu and Feng Ho. However, not long ago, when it came out of the land of origin, it sensed Huowu's aura in the devil's land. As a sovereign divine weapon, was it stupid? Of course not. If Huowu was in the Black Tortoise realm, then there must be something fishy. Feng Ho was full of hostility when she heard this. Don't look like you want to eat me. I am a sovereign divine weapon now. The god-slaying tablet snorted. A smile appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. He turned to Feng Ho and shook his head. I am really convinced that you are still in the mood to think about the god-slaying tablet. What do you mean? Feng Ho raised her eyebrows. The Dragon King and the Qilin Master looked at each other, and an ominous premonition arose in their hearts. At the same time, the rabbit, the blood ancestor, and Long Chen walked over to the 3 of them. Along with Qin Feiyang, they surrounded the 3 of them. The 3's hearts trembled. Sorry. I didn't want to kill you for the time being. But there's no other way. The Lord of the Divine Kingdom wants your heads. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The Lord of the Divine Kingdom. You have already met the Lord of the Divine Kingdom? The 3 were shocked. That's right. We have agreed on the terms. From now on, the older generation of the Divine Kingdom and the Sky Cloud Realm will not interfere in this war, but the condition is that we need your heads. Qin Feiyang smiled. Bastard. The 3 were furious. Don't blame us. If you want to blame someone, blame yourselves. If you hadn't sealed the princess of the Divine Kingdom back then, the Lord of the Divine Kingdom wouldn't be so angry. So, you only have yourselves to blame. In short, you will die sooner or later anyway. Why don't you make some contributions to the Sky Cloud Realm now? Kill yourself, lest we have to do it. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Long Chen. The Dragon King looked at Long Chen. Don't look at me. It is indeed the request of the Lord of the Divine Kingdom. I can't do anything about it. Long Chen shrugged. I refuse to accept it. Dragon King roared furiously. He stared at Qin Feiyang and said, Don't forget. The reason why your Eye of Heaven could evolve is because of our dragon race's crown prince's Eye of Heaven. Chapter 3886. What's the point of bringing up old grudges now? We'll talk about it later. Are you the ones who gave me the Eye of Heaven? No. This is what I won from the first prince after defeating him fair and square. Qin Feiyang shook his head. What about me? I've been taking care of the Fire Qilin and the others for you all these years. That can be considered a favor, right? Said Master Qilin solemnly. I won't deny that. I'm also very grateful to you for that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spared the Divine Qilin sword in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury. You should know that if I want to, Qi Xiaoyan and the White Jade Qilin won't be able to stop me. Therefore, I've already repaid the favor. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Master Qilin sank into silence. Feng Ho said solemnly. In any case, you want to kill us, right? Yes. Back then, you ambushed the Mortal Emperor, the Feather Emperor, and the Blood Ancestor to seal the princess of the Divine Kingdom. Now you're plotting to kill me. You're destined to die. Of course. You won't die in vain. First of all, your deaths will bring 1,000 years of peace to the Skycloud realm. This is a great contribution. Secondly, death is like an extinguished lamp. In the future, the grudges between me and the 3 races will be written off. In other words, I won't target the 3 races anymore. But there's a condition. They won't take the initiative to cause trouble. Qin Feiyang said. Then shouldn't we be grateful to you? The three's eyes turned cold. No. I should be the one thanking you. Thank you for all the sacrifices you've made for the Sky Cloud realm. Although you are selfish, your contributions cannot be erased. Please go on your way. At that time, we will give you a proper burial. After saying that, Qin Feiyang looked at the three in silence. Haha. I really didn't expect that after sacrificing so much for the Sky Cloud realm, we would end up like this. Qin Feiyang, you are really ruthless. Dragon King laughed bitterly and suddenly soared into the sky. His aura surged out as he stared at Qin Feiyang and said, You want me to submit obediently? Never. Feng Ho and the Qilin master looked at each other and rose into the air. They stood beside the Dragon King and said in a low voice, Come and fight with us. Let us see how strong you are now. Sigh. Qin Feiyang sighed. There's no need for such trouble. Sky God Sword, you go. Longchen waved his hand. Clang. Accompanied by a loud noise, the heavenly God Sword appeared and shot towards the three of them like lightning. Longchen, do you still have a conscience? I've taken care of you, your mother, and your sister all these years. Is this how you repay me? I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Dragon King was furious, his face full of resentment. The three ultimate mysteries were activated. Feng Ho and the Qilin Master's faces were also full of madness, and the power of law roared out. Become a ghost? You don't even have the chance to become a ghost. The heavenly God Sword snorted coldly, and its sharp edge swept in all directions, crushing the three of them. Hum. Roar. Chirp. The three of them returned to their original forms and struggled madly, but it was meaningless in the face of the heavenly God Sword. Their physical bodies were instantly shattered, and blood splattered across the sky. Only their heads were left. Whoosh. Following closely, three terrifying sword chi entered the heads of the three of them. With a shrill scream, their divine souls were annihilated on the spot. The remaining head was also dripping with blood. With a bang, it fell in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. Qin Feiyang released his divine thought and shrouded the heads of the three, and found that their divine souls were indeed shattered. He turned to Longchen and frowned. You're quite proactive. Isn't this saving you the trouble of exposing your identity? Longchen smiled. The heavenly God Sword swept over and disappeared into his body. Qin Feiyang took a deep look at Longchen. He also wanted to see something from Longchen's expression, but just like the blood ancestor, he didn't find anything at all. He was indeed a difficult character to deal with. However, in any case, the death of the Dragon King and the other two was already in front of him. Speaking of which, it was really sad. The three lords of the forbidden areas were killed in seconds just like that. No one would have thought of this. Let's go. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, rolled up the heads of the Dragon King and the other two, and rushed toward the inner area. The inner area. The Feather Emperor and the man from the Divine Kingdom fought fiercely. Thus it could be seen that the strength of the man from the Divine Kingdom was no longer what it used to be. When Qin Feiyang and the others arrived at the battlefield, the man from the Divine Kingdom immediately raised his eyebrows and retreated like lightning. It's not over yet. The Feather Emperor snorted coldly, like a god of war, and his aura was like a rainbow. Feather Emperor, stop! Qin Feiyang spoke. His words were filled with an extremely imposing aura. The Feather Emperor stopped in the void, turned his head and looked at Qin Feiyang unhappily. How dare he call his name directly? Impudent. However, when he saw the huge heads of the Dragon King and the other two, the Feather Emperor's face faintly showed a trace of relief. Qin Feiyang took the three heads and walked to the side of the Feather Emperor. He looked at the man from the Divine Kingdom opposite him and said indifferently, These are the heads of the Dragon King and the other two. Take them back and give them to the Lord of the Divine Kingdom. After saying that, he threw the heads of the three over. He really killed them? The man from the Divine Kingdom was stunned. He looked at the three heads for a moment and said to Qin Feiyang, Ruthless indeed, but are these really their heads? Although they are dead, their aura is still there. Can't you tell? Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold. The man from the Divine Kingdom looked at the heads of the three again. Back then, He had fought with the Dragon King and the other two. Judging from the aura, it was indeed the Dragon King and the other two. However, he looked at Qin Feiyang again and said, "How do I know that you didn't keep their souls? Are you deliberately looking for trouble?" The eyes of the blood ancestor and the little rabbit turned cold, and a terrifying aura spread out. Haha. The man from the Divine Kingdom laughed and rushed toward the door of the Divine Kingdom with the 3 heads. But suddenly, he stopped, looked down at Qin Feiyang, and asked curiously, "Qin Feiyang, I'm really curious. Are you the son of the human emperor and the princess, or their descendant? Is there a difference?" Qin Feiyang replied indifferently, "Of course there is a difference. If you are a son, you are the flesh and blood of the princess. But if you are a descendant, at most you will have the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon." The man from the Divine Kingdom sneered. Get lost. Qin Feiyang really didn't want to talk nonsense with this person. You have a personality. Get ready. The younger generation of the Divine Kingdom will soon arrive. At that time, you will realize that even if the older generation of the Divine Kingdom doesn't make a move, the Sky Cloud Realm has no chance of winning. Ants, they are just ants in the end. The man from the Divine Kingdom laughed wildly, and left with the heads of the Dragon King, and the other two without looking back. When the man from the Divine Kingdom entered the gate of the Divine Kingdom, the gate of the Divine Kingdom reappeared in the sky above the core area. He is too arrogant. Fortunately, you stopped me. Otherwise, I would have killed him directly. The God-slaying tablet clamored. Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. They turned to look at the God-slaying tablet and asked suspiciously, "When did we stop you? You are so domineering. Why don't you just kill your way to the Divine Kingdom? We will cheer for you from behind." Ha! The God-slaying tablet laughed dryly. It was just showing off. Why did it have to be so serious? This guy is a little unreliable. Long Chen pulled Qin Feiyang's sleeve and whispered, "What do you mean by a little unreliable? He is very unreliable." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at the God-slaying tablet and looked at the gate of the Divine Kingdom. His eyebrows gradually knitted together. Long Chen looked at the gate of the Divine Kingdom and sized up Qin Feiyang. He said in surprise, "You don't really want to kill your way into the Divine Kingdom, do you?" The Blood Ancestor, the Feather Emperor, and the little rabbit immediately looked at Qin Feiyang. "I do want to. But I don't have the courage." Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. "At least you have some self-awareness." Long Chen smiled and asked, "Then what should we do next?" "What do you think?" Qin Feiyang asked. Long Chen glanced at the land of buried gods and pondered for a while. Then he said, "Since the gate of the Divine Kingdom is here, I suggest that we make the land of buried gods the battlefield between us and the Divine Kingdom." "I agree. So that we won't destroy other places." The Feather Emperor nodded. "But the younger generation of the Divine Kingdom might not do as we wish. I'm afraid that all places in the Skycloud realm will fall into chaos." The Blood Ancestor was worried. "Then we will have to step in." The Feather Emperor's eyes flashed coldly. He looked at the Blood Ancestor and said, "From now on, we will guard the exits of the eastern and northern continents and do our best to stop them from entering the land of buried gods." "But didn't we agree that the older generation can't make a move?" The Blood Ancestor frowned. "We won't make a move. We will just stop them," the Feather Emperor said. "Then what if they insist on leaving the land of buried gods and entering the 4 continents?" The Blood Ancestor asked. "At that time, they would have no choice but to make a move unless they didn't care about the safety of the 4 continents. You don't have to worry so much. At that time, if they really dare to harm the creatures of the 4 continents, the younger generation of the Skycloud realm won't be pushovers." Long Chen waved his hand. He seemed very relaxed. The Feather Emperor and the Blood Ancestor looked at Long Chen and couldn't help but feel bitter. It seemed that they were really old. They didn't even have this bit of confidence and aggressiveness anymore. "All right. The next 1,000 years will be handed over to you youngsters. We old guys can also take this opportunity to rest." The Feather Emperor smiled. The Blood Ancestor also exhaled and said, "Then let's go back to the Nether King's hell and bring everyone back." "Okay." The Feather Emperor nodded and looked at Long Chen. Although he also had the badge and could ignore the rules of the Nether King's hell, he didn't want to expose it too early. Long Chen took out the badge and waved his hand. A space-time tunnel opened, and a group of people entered one after another and disappeared. The Nether King's hell. People from various forces were gathered in the void at this moment. Before Long Chen and the Blood Ancestor left, they said that everyone would be able to return to the Skycloud realm soon. Therefore, they weren't in the mood to cultivate and were anxiously waiting. Therefore, when Qin Feiyang and the others returned, everyone's faces were filled with anticipation. Chapter 3887. Brother Qin, how is it? Huapython had been waiting for Qin Feiyang. Seeing Qin Feiyang appear, he immediately welcomed him with a face full of concern. It's fine for the time being. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. That's good. Huapython heaved a sigh of relief. Someone asked, can we return to Sky Cloud Boundary now? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Great. This kind of life away from home is too painful. Everyone couldn't help but cheer. Even the people of the three races had a smile on their faces. Where's Lord Dragon King? Suddenly, a reclusive old antique of the dragons asked. Yes. I didn't see Lord Feng Ho and the Qilin Master. The people from the Phoenix clan and the Qilin clan also had suspicious looks on their faces. Qin Feiyang glanced at the people of the three races, looked at Long Chen, Feather Emperor and the others and said, you guys make the arrangements. I'll go visit a few old friends. All right. Feather Emperor nodded. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Huapython and smiled. Brother Hua, please take me to the ancient city of King Yu. I knew you're going to visit them. Huapython smiled and immediately left with Qin Feiyang. The Golden Dragons asked, Long Chen, what happened to Lord Dragon King? Why didn't he come back with you? Long Chen looked at the Golden Dragons and then at the people of the three races, and said indifferently, the three of them are dead. What? The people of the three races were in disbelief. Ancient city of King Yu. After so many years, this huge ancient city had not changed at all. The blood demon tribe that lived in the ancient city also lived their days in an orderly fashion. In the sky, Qin Feiyang and Huapython arrived silently. Looking at this familiar scene, Qin Feiyang's joy was hard to hide. And, suddenly, a blood demon youth in the city noticed Qin Feiyang and the fire python, and raised his head to look at them. Lord Guardian. The young man quickly flew up into the sky and said with a smile, My lord, why didn't you tell us that you were coming to the ancient city of the Nether King? We could have come to welcome you. Since we're already so familiar with each other, what's there to welcome? The fire python smiled. This is? The teenager looked at Qin Feiyang again. Qin Feiyang was also sizing up this blood demon youth. Very young. His cultivation was only at the War Emperor. Clearly, he was a junior of the Blood Demon King. Guess who he is? The fire python smiled mysteriously. This. The young man scratched his head in confusion. Although he was still a youth in the Blood Demon race, due to the enormous size of the Blood Demons, he was even taller than an adult. In the meantime, in the ancient castle below, more and more Blood Demons noticed Qin Feiyang and the fire python. The younger generation of blood demons looked at Qin Feiyang with curiosity, but the older generation of blood demons had bewildered expressions. And this bewilderment gradually turned into excitement. Brother Qin. Suddenly, a roar sounded. Following closely, one by one, huge figures rushed out from the ancient city, as if they were ancient giants. It was Shweta and the others. Seeing those familiar faces, a smile appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. He immediately walked up to them. Brother Qin, you missed me so much. Shweta took the lead and gave Qin Feiyang a bear hug. Don't be agitated, don't be agitated. Qin Feiyang roared. Didn't this guy know how strong he was? His small body was like an ant facing an elephant. How could he withstand this kind of enthusiasm? Shweta was stunned and hurriedly let go of Qin Feiyang. He smiled and said, Sorry, I was too happy. Qin Feiyang helplessly moved the shackles, looked at Shweta, and then at Shwe and the others. He smiled and said, Are you all okay? Okay. The group nodded. Dad, who is he? Why are the 10 commanders so excited? A teenager was suspicious. Him. He is Qin Feiyang, the human who left countless legends in our Nether King's hell. The older generation of blood demons couldn't help but reveal a look of reminiscence. What? He is the Qin Feiyang who challenged the divine dragon in our Nether King's ancient city back then. The younger generation of blood demons were shocked. Yes. The older generation nodded. He's our idol. I have to take a good look. Does he have 3 heads and 6 arms? He doesn't look like a big deal. His head is about the same as my thigh. How can he be so strong? The younger generation of the blood demon tribe started to discuss this. Hearing these words, the older generation of blood demons was speechless. How could the height of a human be compared to the blood demons? Whoosh. At this moment, another figure soared into the sky with an excited expression. It was the Nether King. Senior Nether King. Qin Feiyang sensed the aura of the Nether King and immediately looked down. The smile on his face became wider, and he stepped forward to bow respectfully. Good. The Nether King sized up Qin Feiyang and couldn't help but laugh heartily. Our Lord Nether King is still the best. No matter how strong he is, he has to bow respectfully when he sees our Lord Nether King. A teenager said proudly. Kid, what do you know? He is respecting the Lord Nether King. Let me tell you, Qin Feiyang's strength back then was already not weaker than the Lord Nether King, let alone now. The older generation scolded jokingly. What a bunch of naive little guys. The Nether King suppressed his excitement and bowed to the fire python. Greetings, Lord Guardian. I've already said so many times. You don't have to be so polite in front of me. The fire python was dissatisfied. Of course you have to be polite. After all, there are so many juniors watching below. As the elders, we have to set a good example. The Nether King smiled. Up to you. The fire python was helpless. The Nether King looked at Qin Feiyang again and said emotionally. In the blink of an eye, so many years have passed. I thought that I would never have the chance to see you again. How could that be? Regardless of going to the Sky Cloud realm or returning to the Great Qin, don't we have to pass through the Nether King's hell? If I pass through the Nether King's hell, I will definitely come and visit you. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Sigh. The Nether King couldn't help but sigh when he heard this. Why? Qin Feiyang didn't understand. Although you've become stronger, your character hasn't changed at all. You're not like other people. Once you become stronger, you will become arrogant. The Nether King smiled. Don't worry. This kind of thing will never happen to me. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Suddenly, he sensed another aura. He lowered his head and looked at the entrance of a hall in the center of the ancient city. He saw an old man in blood-red clothes standing at the entrance, looking up at him. This old man was the Nether King's father. Back then, he had tried every possible means to possess Frenzied. It was just that he didn't know if he had given up on this idea after so many years. However, even if he hadn't, he no longer had the chance now. Because with Frenzied's current strength, killing this old man would be as easy as blowing off dust. Humph. The old man in blood-red clothes snorted when he saw Qin Feiyang looking over. He then turned around and entered the hall without looking back. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. It seemed that this old man was still brooding over what happened back then. If this old man had really succeeded in possessing Frenzied, then the one who was famous in the Sky Cloud domain now wouldn't be Frenzied. The Nether King noticed this scene. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said apologetically, Brother Qin, don't mind him. You know my old father's character. He's just like that. It's okay. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. He glanced at the blood demon race below and felt a myriad of emotions in his heart. Who would have thought that the seemingly weak blood demon race would be the hero who stopped the Divine Kingdom from invading the lower domain back then? It could be said that if the Blood Demon King hadn't brought the blood demon race to the Nether King's hell to stop the experts of the Divine Kingdom, the first and second levels, including the Great Qin and the Ancient Domain, would have been plunged into misery and suffering. However, such a hero was now forgotten by the world, and was even trapped in the Nether King's hell. His cultivation would forever stop at the 9th heaven realm. How unfair was this? Qin Feiyang sighed. He bowed to the blood demon race in the ancient city and said, I represent the entire human race and all the common people to thank you. Ha! Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. King Yu Xuede, and the others were the same. Qin Feiyang didn't explain. He smiled and said, You will understand in the future. Ridiculous. Xuede scratched his head and didn't think much. He patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder and said, Brother Qin, it's not easy for you to come here. Why don't we get drunk today? Qin Feiyang looked at Xuede in astonishment. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. How can I be in the mood to drink now? I still have a lot of things to deal with. Xuede was stunned. He frowned and said, Don't tell me you are leaving soon. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Xuede was unhappy. Xuede, King Yu scolded and sighed. Although we know nothing about the Sky Cloud realm, the living beings of the Sky Cloud realm have all come to the Nether King's hell. Something big must have happened. Brother Qin must be busy dealing with it. But there is no need to be in such a hurry. Xuede muttered. There really can't be any delay. Now that the passage to the 4th floor has collapsed, if I don't go back with everyone now, I won't be able to go back in the future. Qin Feiyang smiled. King Yu was stunned and asked, Are the people of the Sky Cloud realm leaving? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. King Yu smiled and said, Then this is good news. The Nether King's hell has finally returned to peace. Yes. All these years, we have caused you too much trouble. Qin Feiyang smiled. It's not that troublesome. We don't have much interaction with them. They have never been to the ancient city of the Nether King. It's just that they are not used to a group of strangers suddenly coming. King Yu waved his hand. Strangers, Qin Feiyang murmured. If Blood Demon King didn't bring the Blood Demon clan to the Nether King's hell back then, would they still be strangers? Of course not. The Blood Demon clan's roots were in the Sky Cloud realm. No. He had to let the Blood Demon clan return to their homeland. Qin Feiyang clenched his hands slightly and raised his head to look at the unhappy Xuede. He smiled and said, Brother, don't be like this. There will be plenty of opportunities to drink together in the future. All right, I know you are a busy man. Xuede pursed his lips. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly. After a moment of silence, he turned to look at Hua Python and said, Brother Hua, why don't you help me inform the old ancestor and ask him to come to the Nether King's hell to pick me up in 2 days? Brother Qin, there is really no need. King Yu hurriedly said, not forgetting to glare at Xuede. But Xuede directly ignored him. His face was full of excitement as he shouted to the clansmen below. What are you all standing there for? Get moving, prepare wine and dishes, and properly entertain Brother Qin. Immediately, the clansmen of the Blood Demon clan became busy. Looking at this scene, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel a warm current in his heart. Even though they weren't family, they were better than family. Chapter 3888. At night. It was lively and noisy. In front of these blood demons, Qin Feiyang was like a dwarf. But this did not affect their communication and friendship at all. Moreover, he had already experienced the blood demon race's banquet. The wine bowls were just like huge vats. Moreover, be it the wine or the food, they all contained evil power. However, for the current Qin Feiyang, this evil power was no longer a threat to him. He could just refine it later. Of course, in front of these old friends, Qin Feiyang naturally would not be stingy. He took out hundreds of thousands of vats of divine wine. The entire ancient city was immediately enveloped in the fragrance of wine. Is this the taste of divine wine? It is indeed different. Xuede laughed loudly. Vats of divine wine were continuously poured into his stomach. With his size, a jar of divine wine was just a matter of drinking it in one gulp. Be more polite. This is divine wine, not plain water. King Yu glared at Xuede. It's okay. I have plenty. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Did you hear that? I have plenty. Brothers, drink to your heart's content. Why don't we take all of his divine brew tonight? Xuede shouted at the top of his lungs. The others also joined in the commotion. King Yu was helpless. It's okay. As long as everyone is happy. Qin Feiyang comforted them. They are only so happy to see you. King Yu shook his head. Qin Feiyang glanced at them one by one. These faces really made one's heart feel warm. Wait. Suddenly King Yu slapped his head. What's the matter? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. King Yu said, I seem to have missed someone. Who is it? Qin Feiyang and the fire python exchanged glances and looked at him doubtfully. Follow me. King Yu got up and soared into the sky, flying toward the southern city wall. Qin Feiyang and the fire python followed behind King Yu. Very soon, the city wall came into sight. There was a huge dragon lying on the city wall. This giant dragon was dozens of meters long, and its entire body was snow-white. It lay on the city wall motionlessly, as if it was an exquisite sculpture. It was a snow dragon. Snow dragons were very rare. Because the snow dragon was the same as the white jade qilin, it could be considered a mutated divine beast. So it was him. The fire python suddenly understood. You know him? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. The fire python smiled. Look at the head of the snow dragon. Qin Feiyang looked at the top of the snow dragon's head, and his expression froze. He saw a black-clothed youth lying on the snow dragon's head. This young man looked to be in his 20s. He was dressed in rags and his eyes were closed. There was a green foxtail in his mouth, and he was snoring faintly. When he came back to his senses, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but smile bitterly. So it was this guy. Who would have thought that he would be in the ancient city of King Yu? He came to the underworld king's hell with the people from the sky cloud realm. However, he has been sleeping here ever since he arrived. We didn't dare to disturb him. King Yu was helpless. He had seen this young man before. Back then, he brought the ancient city of King Yu along with Qin Feiyang and the others to the Fallen Valley. At that time, he had met this young man in the Fallen Valley. Not only was this young man not afraid of the evil force in the Fallen Valley, his strength was unfathomable. Hence, ever since the young man came to the ancient city of King Yu had been carefully worshipping him. Now, King Yu brought Qin Feiyang here. Obviously, he wanted Qin Feiyang to bring the young man back to the sky cloud realm. Little brother. Qin Feiyang walked over. The young man slowly opened his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang indifferently. He didn't say a word and closed his eyes again. Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. Why was this guy so listless every day? Qin Feiyang landed on the city wall and looked at the snow dragon with a smile. Not bad, you changed your mount again. What's with that look? The snow dragon looked at Qin Feiyang in disdain. Ha! Qin Feiyang was stunned. This voice, wasn't it the voice of the snow python? You are? Qin Feiyang looked at the snow dragon in surprise. Yes, it's me. The snow dragon nodded. Not bad. Qin Feiyang was extremely surprised. This snow python had actually transformed into a snow dragon. It was really like a fish leaping through the dragon gate. How is it? Do I look good right now? The snow dragon smiled proudly. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. The snow dragon was really much more beautiful than other divine dragons. Immediately, Qin Feiyang looked at the motionless and silent young man and said helplessly, Little brother, can you give me some reaction? What reaction do you want? You're not a little girl. Do you want me to pamper you? The young man yawned, slowly opened his eyes, and looked at Qin Feiyang unhappily. Why did he come here? Didn't he see me sleeping? Qin Feiyang's face twitched fiercely. Pamper? It was a bit inappropriate to use this word on two grown men. Hurry up and drink with them. Don't disturb my sleep. The young man waved his hand impatiently and was about to close his eyes again. You know I'm here? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Nonsense. You made such a big commotion. How could I not know? The young man rolled his eyes helplessly. Since you know, why didn't you come to visit me? Qin Feiyang asked. If you're a little girl, I can consider it. Unfortunately, you're not. The young man laughed. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He stepped forward and grabbed the young man, saying, let's go and have a few drinks. We've known each other for so long, but we've never had a good drink together. Aren't you annoying? Is it so difficult to sleep? The young man roared in dissatisfaction. Qin Feiyang ignored him and dragged him to the banquet. Seeing the arrival of the young man, Shweta and the others were suddenly a little nervous. It's fine. We're all on the same side. Qin Feiyang smiled. After 3 rounds of drinks, Qin Feiyang looked at the young man beside him and asked curiously, "Why didn't you go to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure this time? What's so fun about that place?" The young man said with a lazy look. Qin Feiyang looked at the young man in surprise and asked, "Have you been to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure before?" Cough, cough. The young man coughed and shook his head, saying, "I haven't been there." "If you haven't been there, how do you know it's not fun? And looking at your expression, it seems a little unnatural. Tell me honestly, who exactly are you? After so many years, no one has investigated your origin." Qin Feiyang was curious. "My origin?" The young man muttered and grinned. "If I say that I'm the son of the god of creation, would you believe me?" The son of the god of creation? Qin Feiyang was stunned. King Yu and Fire Python also looked at the young man in a daze. "If you're the son of the god of creation, then I'm the brother of the god of creation." Shweta laughed loudly. The young man looked at Shweta with a strange expression. Qin Feiyang, King Yu, and Fire Python could not help but shake their heads and laugh. "See, it's not easy for me to tell you the truth, but you don't believe me. What can I do?" The young man shrugged. Okay. We believe that you're the son of the god of creation. Come, let's have a drink." Qin Feiyang held the wine cup and did not take it to heart. In the next few days, Qin Feiyang completely relaxed. During the day, he strolled around and looked around. At night, he drank and chatted merrily, especially the blood demon youth. At first, they were still somewhat in awe of Qin Feiyang. But as they slowly got along with him, they realized that Qin Feiyang was very easy to get along with. He did not put on any airs at all. Hence they stayed by Qin Feiyang's side all day long. Qin Feiyang would also teach them cultivation sometimes. With his current strength, just a few pointers would be enough to benefit these juniors for the rest of their lives. But there was a problem. It had been lingering in Qin Feiyang's heart. That night, everyone gathered together as usual, drinking and chatting. After it ended, Qin Feiyang sat on the city wall and looked up at the evil moon with a frown. "What are you thinking about here alone?" Fire Python flew over and looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and smiled at Fire Python. After pondering for a while, he asked, "Brother Fire, you're now the guardian of the Nether King's Hell. Do you know why the blood demons can't leave the Nether King's Hell?" "Can't leave the Nether King's Hell?" Fire Python was slightly taken aback and shook his head. To be exact, the blood demons can't leave the evil power because once they leave the evil power, they won't be able to cultivate. The result of being unable to cultivate will slowly become unable to survive. Then why is that? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Fire Python pondered for a while and said, "According to my observations over the years and my understanding of the blood demons and other creatures, it should be related to the marks on their bodies." "I know this." Qin Feiyang nodded. Whether it was the blood demons or other creatures of the Nether King's Hell, they all had marks on their bodies. Although they all have marks, their marks are different. The marks of the blood demons are the evil moon and the evil sun, while the marks of the other creatures are a skull. But no matter what the marks are, they all have one thing in common, and that is that they can all absorb the evil power. Although the other creatures here can't directly absorb the power of the evil sun and evil moon like the blood demon race, they still rely on the power of the evil sun to survive here. Fire Python said. Qin Feiyang nodded. He already knew about these marks back then. His initial guess was that these marks were related to the laws of the Nether King's Hell, which was the same as the original Black Tortoise world. The original creatures of the Black Tortoise world also had marks. Later, when he became the ruler of the Black Tortoise world, he erased these marks. This way, the creatures of the Black Tortoise world wouldn't continue to be bound by the marks. But now, Qin Feiyang had another opinion. There was a fundamental difference between the Black Tortoise world and the Nether King's Hell. The Black Tortoise world was an independent world, but the Nether King's Hell was just one of the continents in the Divine Ruins. In other words, the Nether King's Hell wasn't an independent world. A world that wasn't independent couldn't be the same as the Black Tortoise world. Actually, I have a guess. Fire Python hesitated for a moment and said. What guess? Qin Feiyang turned and looked at Fire Python suspiciously. Chapter 3889. Needless to say, the mark of the blood demon race must be because of the evil moon and evil Sunday, because they need this mark to borrow the power of the evil moon and evil Sunday. So, I'm talking about other creatures. I guess the marks on other creatures have nothing to do with the rules of the Nether King Hell. The fire python shook its head. Nothing to do with the rules? Qin Feiyang frowned. In fact, he had the same idea. That's right. What's really related is the evil moon and evil Sunday. The fire python nodded. Are you saying that the skull marks on other creatures appeared because of the evil moon and the evil sun? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes. Because if you want to survive here, you must have the ability to not be afraid of the evil force. But the evil force is everywhere in the Nether King Hell. Except for the blood demon race, other races can't survive at all. Of course. An expert like you naturally has to be treated differently. After all, the evil force can't pose much of a threat to you. But for creatures below the imperishable realm, this evil force is fatal. The fire python said. That makes sense. Qin Feiyang nodded. The rules of the Nether King Hell were restrictions on cultivation, teleportation, and entering space divine objects. In fact, such restrictions were very common. For example, the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Although the Sky Bell Divine Treasure didn't have cultivation restrictions, the restrictions in other aspects were similar to the Nether King Hell. However, the undead in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure didn't have any mark on them. So, from this point, one could conclude, although the Nether King Hell had restrictions, these rules wouldn't form a mark on the creatures. Apart from the rules, the most unique thing in the Nether King Hell was the evil moon and evil Sunday. In this way, the origin of the mark was very likely because of the evil moon and evil Sunday. Qin Feiyang looked up at the evil moon, shook his head and sighed. It seems that we have to wait for senior brother to come out to figure this out. I hope he can bring us good news, but I don't know what he is doing now. The fire python looked at the evil moon, its eyes full of suspicion. Who knows? Qin Feiyang shrugged. At that time, Madman didn't say anything and just assured him. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and turned to look at the fire python. He asked, Brother Fire, has anyone else entered the Sky Cloud realm these years? Enter the Sky Cloud realm? The fire python was stunned. It lowered its head and tried to recall. It shook its head and said, I think so. Wait, there's one. Really? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He was just asking casually. This was because many people in the ancient world and Great Qin knew about the existence of the fourth level. For example, Yi Zhong, the Beast Emperor, Uncle Yuan, and many others. He wanted to see if anyone would follow their footsteps and enter the Sky Cloud realm. But unexpectedly, there really was one. Yes. The fire python nodded and said with a smile. This person is also your childhood friend. Wait. Aren't you in the Sky Cloud realm? Didn't she look for you? Childhood friends? Qin Feiyang was stunned and scratched his head. The person who could be considered as his childhood sweetheart seemed to be only Lin Yi. Qin Feiyang quivered and asked, Are you talking about Lin Yi? Yes. That's her. It seems that you really don't know. Strange. You are also famous in the Sky Cloud realm now. Why didn't she look for you? The fire python lowered its head with a puzzled face. Suddenly, its eyes trembled. It looked at Qin Feiyang and said in surprise, Did she have an accident in the Sky Cloud realm? Qin Feiyang's heart also sank. Who here knew the dangers of the Sky Cloud realm better than him? Not to mention the 4 continents, even the Sky Cloud Sea was not something Lin Yi could set foot in. How could this be? Isn't it good to stay in the ancient world? Why did she go to the Sky Cloud realm? No. I have to find her quickly. But how should I find her? Qin Feiyang was a little flustered for a while. He had no clue. Don't worry. When she entered the Sky Cloud realm, she had already broken through to the imperishable realm. It shouldn't be a problem for her to protect herself. The fire python comforted. Brother Fire, in the sky cloud realm, the imperishable realm cultivation base is nothing at all. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. However, his anxious mood calmed down. Yes, Little Rabbit. Little Rabbit was in charge of Sky Cloud Island all year round. If someone entered the Sky Cloud realm, it would know. After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyang looked at the fire python and said, "Can you help me see if the old ancestor and the others have returned to the Sky Cloud realm?" The fire python closed its eyes and extended its perception infinitely. After a while, it opened its eyes and shook its head. "I didn't see anyone. They have all left. It has been a few days. Why hasn't the old ancestor come to pick me up?" Qin Feiyang frowned. Could it be that something happened in the Sky Cloud realm again? Don't worry. Heaven helps the worthy. Besides, if Lin Yi really has an accident, even if you rush back now, you can't change anything. The fire python comforted. Qin Feiyang sighed deeply. I hope this girl is still alive. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Swish. Early in the morning, Feather Emperor finally arrived at the ancient city. Old ancestor, what happened to you? I told you to pick me up in 2 days. Look at it now. Half a month has passed. I thought you had forgotten me here. Qin Feiyang complained immediately. Aren't I busy settling down the creatures in the Sky Cloud realm? Besides, even if I forgot anyone, I wouldn't dare to forget you. After all, you are now the pillar of our Sky Cloud realm. Feather Emperor smiled. Greetings, Lord Feather Emperor. At this time, King Yu Xueda and the others rose into the air and bowed respectfully. You know each other? Qin Feiyang looked at King Yu and the others in surprise. Feather Emperor must know King Yu and the others. After all, Feather Emperor had been lurking in hell for so many years. But King Yu and the others shouldn't have seen Feather Emperor before. King Yu smiled and said, 2 years ago, Lord Feather Emperor came to visit us. I see. Qin Feiyang suddenly realized. Thinking about it, it made sense. The current Blood Demon tribe was made up of the descendants of the Blood Demon King. Thus, it was only natural for the Feather Emperor to visit them. No need to be so polite. Feather Emperor waved his hand and smiled. Looking at these giants in front of him, his heart was filled with emotions. If it wasn't for that battle back then, how could the Blood Demon race have fallen to such a state today? They had even been forgotten by the creatures in the Sky Cloud realm. It was all for the sake of the world. But soon, the Blood Demon race would be free. Huff. Taking a deep breath, Feather Emperor looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Aren't you going to take the opportunity to return to Great Qin to take a look? Great Qin. Qin Feiyang murmured and shook his head. Forget it. If we go back now, we will only add more psychological burden to ourselves. After we deal with the Divine Kingdom, we will go back together. All right. Feather Emperor nodded. Looking at King Yu and the others and the fire python, he smiled and said, Then we will return to the Sky Cloud realm first. Take care. King Yu cupped his hands. The fire python looked at Qin Feiyang and said sincerely, Brother Qin, I definitely can't help you, but I am in charge of the 3rd floor of the Divine Site. It will always be your safe haven. Thank you. Qin Feiyang was touched. Go. For the sake of the world, do your best. The fire python smiled. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at the young man who was still sleeping not far away. He smiled and said, Little brother, let's go. The young man looked at Qin Feiyang and the others with sleepy eyes and shook his head, saying, I don't want to go now. Feather Emperor sized up the young man, and his pupils shrank slightly. He transmitted his voice. Feiyang, this person is not simple. If he was simple, I wouldn't have dragged him to the Sky Cloud realm. In the future, when we face the Divine Kingdom, he will definitely be of great help. Qin Feiyang smiled secretly and went forward to pull the young man up by force, saying, What's so fun here? Let me tell you, the Sky Cloud realm is the most exciting place right now. Isn't it just a mere Divine Kingdom? This young master doesn't care about it at all. The young man snorted and reluctantly followed Qin Feiyang to the front of Feather Emperor. Snow Dragon was lying on the young man's shoulder, and taking a nap. Snow Dragon wasn't like this in the past. He was very energetic. Why did he like to sleep so much now? It seemed that this thing was contagious. A mere divine kingdom? The corner of Feather Emperor's mouth twitched. This tone of his was really not an ordinary level of arrogance. Blood Demon said reluctantly, "Brother Qin, come back more often when you have time." "Don't worry." Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. No matter who he forgot, he would never forget this group of simple and kind blood demons. Feather Emperor looked at Qin Feiyang and the young man and asked, "Which one of you has mastered the space-time law?" Qin Feiyang looked directly at the young man. Because Chu Yin said that this guy had mastered the space-time law. The young man pursed his lips and said indifferently, "Where are you going?" "Sky Cloud Island." Qin Feiyang didn't hesitate. He must figure out Lin Yi's whereabouts. The young man waved his hand, and a space-time passage appeared. "See you later." Qin Feiyang turned his head to look at Fire Python, Ghost King, and the others. He cupped his hands and smiled, then turned and stepped into the passage. Feather Emperor thought for a while and handed the badge in his hand to Fire Python, saying, "When Little Madman appears, give this badge to him and let him return to the Sky Cloud realm quickly." "Okay." Fire Python nodded and took the badge. When Feather Emperor and the young man entered the passage quickly dissipated. "Lord Guardian, is the Divine Kingdom very strong?" Ghost King looked at Fire Python and asked. "I don't know. I have never seen the powerhouses of the Divine Kingdom. I just heard Qin Feiyang talk about the Divine Kingdom. But according to what he said, I'm afraid this Divine Kingdom is not ordinary. They may face a bitter battle. It's not only related to the safety of the Sky Cloud realm, but also the safety of our Nether King, Hell, and even the ancient world and Great Qin. In short, if they fall, the world will be finished." Fire Python was worried. "Sigh. We can only blame ourselves for being useless. We don't even have the qualifications to contribute." Blood Demon stomped his feet angrily. "Don't say that." Fire Python laughed. Many years ago, the Blood Demon clan was the savior of the world. But now they were indeed unable to participate in this war. Chapter 3890. Sky Cloud Island. Sky Cloud Island, which had been destroyed in the battle with the golden-armored middle-aged man, had been restored. After all, this was Little Rabbit's nest. With Little Rabbit's ability, it was easy to create an island. However, at this moment, there was a pavilion on the mountain peak. There was a stone table and 4 stone stools in the pavilion. Little Rabbit and Blood Ancestor were sitting in the pavilion, one drinking wine and the other drinking tea. Swish. As Qin Feiyang and Feather Emperor appeared, Blood Ancestor got up and looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile. "You look good." "Of course I'm good after resting for so long." Qin Feiyang smiled and walked into the pavilion. He scanned the endless sea in front of him and nodded. Facing the sea, the scenery is endless. It's not enough. What a showy thing. The young man pouted and walked to Blood Ancestor's side and sat down. He snatched the divine wine from Little Rabbit's hand and gulped it down. Little Rabbit looked at the young man in shock. Blood Ancestor's mouth twitched. The young man was the first person who dared to snatch wine from Little Rabbit. He knew more about the young man than Feather Emperor, because he had already heard about the young man when he appeared in the ancient world. "What look? Isn't it just a jar of wine? I'll return it to you." The young man glanced at Little Rabbit in disdain, and threw the wine jar over. "Uncle Rabbit has a bad temper." Little Rabbit jumped up and slapped the young man with its paw. But at the same time, a space-time law appeared and the young man disappeared in an instant. The next moment he appeared in the sky above the sea. So fast? Little Rabbit's expression froze. Feather Emperor and Blood Ancestor also looked at Little Rabbit in shock. Although they didn't master the space-time law, as the leaders of the human race, they naturally knew the power of the major laws like the back of their hands. At this moment, the space-time law displayed by the young man had reached the level of the ultimate profound. It was really unexpected. This mysterious young man actually mastered the ultimate profound of the strongest law. Qin Feiyang was also stunned. When he came back to his senses, he saw the young man smiling at Little Rabbit before turning around and leaving. He hurriedly asked, "Where are you going?" "To find a place to sleep," the young man answered without turning his head. "Sleep?" Qin Feiyang was speechless. Very soon, the young man disappeared from their sight. The blood ancestor asked suspiciously, "Feiyang, who is this person?" "I don't know." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Even you don't know?" The blood ancestor frowned. Qin Feiyang was the one who was most familiar with the young man. "I've asked him, but he didn't give me a single proper answer. If I tell you, you will definitely find it laughable. He said that he is the son of the god of creation." Qin Feiyang was speechless. The mouths of the Emperor of Feathers, the little rabbit, and the blood ancestor twitched. "I'm the father of the god of creation. Do you believe it? Don't worry about him. That's because I've yet to sense any malice from him. They shouldn't be enemies." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sat down next to the blood ancestor. He looked at the little rabbit and frowned. "Big brother, are you hiding something from me?" "What am I hiding from you?" The little rabbit drank wine while looking at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and Lin Yi's phantasm appeared immediately. He asked, "Have you seen her before?" As soon as the little rabbit saw Lin Yi's phantasm, his expression suddenly became a little unnatural. He shook his head and said, "No, who is she?" "No." Fire Python said that she came to the Sky Cloud realm. "You have been guarding the Sky Cloud Island all year round. How dare you say that you haven't seen her?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. "What a talkative guy." The little rabbit snorted secretly and looked at Qin Feiyang. "I really haven't. Although Uncle Rabbit has been guarding this place all year round, there are times when I have to leave. What if she just entered the Sky Cloud realm when I left?" The little rabbit said faintly. "Is there such a coincidence? If your expression is natural, I will really believe it." Qin Feiyang sneered. The little rabbit looked at Blood Ancestor and Feather Emperor and asked, "Uncle Rabbit's expression is unnatural?" "Naturally. It's too natural. It's obvious that you have a guilty conscience." Feather Emperor despised. "You are the one who has a guilty conscience." The little rabbit glared at him fiercely. Qin Feiyang asked, "So have you really seen her?" "Yes." The little rabbit nodded. "Where did she go?" Qin Feiyang asked hurriedly. "Uncle Rabbit killed her with a slap." The little rabbit said faintly. "You." Qin Feiyang got up abruptly, endured the anger in his heart and said angrily, "I am not joking with you. This person is very important to me." "How important?" The little rabbit was curious. Qin Feiyang paused and said, "In short, she is very important." "Compared to your wife, who is more important?" The little rabbit asked. "Are you done? One of them is my wife, and the other is my sister. Can you compare them together? Of course they are equally important. Tell me quickly." Qin Feiyang was extremely annoyed. "I see." Little Rabbit came to a sudden realization and teased. "Uncle Rabbit thought that you had other thoughts towards this childhood sweetheart of yours." "Childhood sweetheart?" Qin Feiyang was taken aback. "The little rabbit even knows this? Wait a minute. This bastard not only met Lin Yi, but also chatted with Lin Yi. She even knows my relationship with Lin Yi. Since she knows their relationship, the little rabbit will definitely take care of Lin Yi more or less. In other words, Lin Yi should be in no danger now." Feather Emperor glanced at the little rabbit and asked, "Feiyang, is this girl really your childhood sweetheart?" Qin Feiyang nodded. Ancestor Blood asked curiously again, "Have you two done anything beyond friendship?" "Something beyond friendship?" Qin Feiyang was taken aback. A row of black lines appeared on his forehead. He said angrily, "You are already so old. Why are your thoughts still so dirty? How can you say that? You have no respect for your elders." Ancestor Blood's face turned black. Qin Feiyang was speechless. "You are allowed to have dirty thoughts, but others are not allowed to say it?" The little rabbit looked at Qin Feiyang, rolled her eyes, and asked Feather Emperor, "When you evacuated this time, did you see this girl?" "No." Feather Emperor shook his head. "I didn't either. Could it be? Could it be? The little rabbit was surprised. Qin Feiyang was shocked when he heard it. What could it be? What could it be? Can you not scare me? Zuh. Old 3, to tell you the truth, I did take care of her and asked her to go directly to the eastern continent to find you, but I really don't know if there were any accidents on the way. The little rabbit shook her head and sighed. Qin Feiyang's face turned pale when he heard it. When he evacuated, he didn't see Lin Yi. He didn't know where she was now. Could it be that an accident really happened? A hint of playfulness flashed in the little rabbit's eyes. She comforted. Big brother understands your feelings, but the dead can't be resurrected. Take it easy. Qin Feiyang returned to the stone bench weakly. Ancestor Blood and Feather Emperor looked at each other. Lin Yi was indeed important to Qin Feiyang. Feather Emperor glared at the little rabbit and said, "Since you know their relationship, why didn't you personally escort her to the eastern continent? Do you think Uncle Rabbit is a saint?" The little rabbit glared at him. Feather Emperor said angrily, "Isn't this a piece of cake for you?" "Yes. But does Uncle Rabbit have this obligation?" the little rabbit asked. Feather Emperor was speechless for a while. It seemed that there was no such obligation. Qin Feiyang sighed deeply and shook his head. "Old ancestor, don't blame Big Brother. After all, he is such a cold person." "I'm cold? In the beginning, who gave you the way to the eastern continent? Who has been protecting the princess of the divine kingdom and the land of buried gods? And who was it that repeatedly saved you when you were in danger? Uncle Rabbit has seen through you. You are more white-eyed wolf than white-eyed wolf. You are simply heartless." The little rabbit was unhappy and scolded Qin Feiyang fiercely. "I didn't say anything to you. Why are you saying so much?" Qin Feiyang said angrily. "Nonsense. With your current attitude, who would feel comfortable seeing it? Besides, I can give her directions and let her go to the eastern continent. That is already a great mercy. Whether she can survive or not depends on her own ability. Don't tell me you want Uncle Rabbit to protect her." The little rabbit snorted coldly. Okay. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's leave it to fate." Qin Feiyang waved his hand again and again. He was quite irritated. "I can't always think of the bad side of everything. What if Lin Yi is hiding somewhere and meditating in seclusion? Perhaps she has changed her appearance and blended into the crowd. Even if Feather Emperor and the little rabbit saw her, they would definitely not recognize her." Feather Emperor glared at the little rabbit, raised his hand, and patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder to comfort him. Then he said, "The creatures of each continent have been arranged. The people of the 3 major races have also returned to their respective nests. Now, only the people of Demon Palace, Heavenly Palace, Divine Palace, and Rogue Cultivator Alliance are left. You can arrange these people yourself." "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang frowned and asked, "What about the people of the land of buried gods? How did you arrange them?" The door of the divine kingdom was in the land of buried gods, so they definitely couldn't set foot in the land of buried gods. Feather Emperor said, "I have discussed this matter with the little rabbit. The people of the land of buried gods will stay in the heavenly cloud sea in the future. When you return to the Black Tortoise world, send old Qing and the others out." "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at the blood ancestor. "Ancestor, when the time comes, I will have to trouble you to help me set up a 5,000 years a day time array in the Demon Palace, Heavenly Palace, Divine Palace, Rogue Cultivator Alliance, and the major cities. Only by doing so could the overall strength of the Heavenly Cloud realm be effectively improved. This is a small matter. Now, although everything in the Heavenly Cloud realm has returned to normal, because of the oppression of the Divine Kingdom, everyone is in a bad mood. In short, in everyone's hearts, there is always a sense of panic. If this feeling is not eliminated, I am afraid that even if a 5,000 years a day time array is set up, they will not be able to calm down and cultivate." The blood ancestor said worriedly. "The younger generation of the Divine Kingdom hasn't arrived yet?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes." The blood ancestor nodded. Qin Feiyang frowned. It had been more than half a month, but they still hadn't come out. What was going on? However, the problem mentioned by the blood ancestor was indeed worthy of attention. He had to think of a way to deal with this panic as soon as possible. Chapter 3891. In the pavilion. The refreshing fragrance of the tea and the gentle sea breeze made people feel relaxed and happy. Qin Feiyang held a teacup and sipped the tea while pondering. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as he looked at the blood ancestor, the feather emperor, and little rabbit. He smiled and said, "Actually, the best way is to accept the challenge from the divine kingdom." Accept the challenge from the divine kingdom? The feather emperor was stunned. That's right. Why is everyone panicking? It's because the people from the divine kingdom are too strong. Even leaders like you don't dare to face the divine kingdom head-on, so there's a shadow in your heart. As the saying goes, whoever tied the bell should untie it. To solve this problem, we have to start from the root. Qin Feiyang explained. The blood ancestor pondered for a while and said suspiciously, "You mean when the geniuses from the divine kingdom arrive, we will immediately accept their challenge?" No. They won't challenge us. We will take the initiative to challenge them. And we must win the first battle, because only by winning can we boost morale and stimulate everyone's fighting spirit. Only by winning can we shatter the shadow in everyone's heart and stand up again. Qin Feiyang said, his eyes shining. That's a good idea. However, I'm afraid that the divine kingdom has the same idea. The blood ancestor frowned. That's inevitable. The geniuses from the divine kingdom will definitely want to take us down a notch and further suppress our morale. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. The feather emperor asked, "So who will fight in the first battle?" Little Rabbit pointed at Qin Feiyang and said indifferently, "Nonsense, of course it's him." "I can't." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. "Don't tell me you don't have the confidence?" Little Rabbit raised her eyebrows. "There's no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Little Rabbit was stunned. How could he treat the geniuses of the divine kingdom as little chicks? How domineering. For the first battle, we can't let Qin Feiyang fight. After all, he is our trump card. The blood ancestor chuckled. The little rabbit looked at the blood ancestor with confusion in her eyes. What kind of tricks did Qin Feiyang have up his sleeves? Even the blood ancestor was praising him? How about this? White-Eyed Wolf, Fire Dance, and Masked Azura are all in seclusion to fuse with their inheritances. The little lunatic is also in the Infernal King's hell. He can't come back for the time being. Now only Qin Feiyang, Yun Xiang, Li Feng, and Long Chen are left. Long Chen definitely won't make a move easily. Qin Feiyang also needs to conserve his strength. For the first battle, why don't we let Li Feng and Yun Xiang fight? The blood ancestor suggested. Sure. Both of them have grasped ultimate profound meanings. Besides, apart from the ultimate profound meaning, Yun Xiang has also comprehended several other profound meanings. Not to mention Li Feng. He has 2 ultimate profound meanings, and the puppet true body. It won't be a problem for him to fight against 4 of them. The Feather Emperor nodded. Little Rabbit pondered for a while and nodded in agreement. No. If we let them fight, the chances of winning won't be high. However, Qin Feiyang disagreed. The chances of winning won't be high? The Feather Emperor and the other 2 looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. With Li Feng and Yun Xiang's strength and means, it was impossible for them to lose. Back in the land of buried gods, Yun Xiang and Li Feng fought with the old man from the divine kingdom. The old man knows their strength like the back of his hand. Moreover, the old man regards them as the super geniuses of the sky cloud realm. Qin Feiyang smiled. Super geniuses? The Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit were stunned. It's like this. At that time, the old man praised Yun Xiang and Li Feng quite a bit. He thought that they were the strongest of the younger generation of the sky cloud realm. I reckon that Yun Xiang and Li Feng's names have already spread to the ears of the geniuses of the divine kingdom. The blood ancestor shook his head and laughed. The true geniuses of the sky cloud realm were still keeping a low profile. I see. The Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit suddenly understood. Since the geniuses of the divine kingdom already know the strength and means of Li Feng and Yun Xiang, they will definitely think of a way to deal with them in advance. Therefore, I don't agree with letting them fight in the first battle. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then do you have anyone else in mind? The blood ancestor asked. Qin Feiyang turned his head to look at the sea ahead and murmured. If he hadn't left, he would have been the most suitable candidate. Him. The blood ancestor and the other two were stunned. Then, they realized that Qin Feiyang must be talking about that mysterious young man. If this young man could fight, it would indeed be good. Because this young man always gave people an unfathomable feeling, and his whereabouts were always uncertain. Unfortunately, he had no intention of participating in this battle at all. To be honest. In fact, everyone envied Mu Qing's life. She was like a wild crane, free and unrestrained. This matter is not urgent. Let's wait until the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom arrive. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and asked, What about Longchen? He has returned to the dragons. The blood ancestor said. Qin Feiyang said, Then do the three clans have any complaints about the deaths of Dragon King and the other two? Of course. But the three of them died in the hands of Longchen. Longchen didn't hide this matter. Even if they hate him, they hate Longchen more. As for us, we are at most considered as accomplices. The Feather Emperor smiled faintly, not caring at all. The deaths of the three are not to be regretted. It doesn't matter even if they hate him. But, the Dragons and Qilin clans are now led by Longchen and Qi Xiaoyan. But the Feng people. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. With Feng Ho's death, the Feng people were akin to a group of dragons without a leader. Because Bing Changtian was also dead, and the leader of the Feng people had also left the Feng people. The elders and reclusive old antiques of the Feng people were definitely not capable of leading the Feng people. You want Huo Wenchang and Huo Wu to return? The blood ancestor asked. I can't decide whether they stay or leave. It's up to them. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Indeed, you can't interfere in this matter. After all, the Feng people have caused too much harm to them. The Feather Emperor nodded. Fine. I'll go to the Black Tortoise world first. Qin Feiyang finished the tea in his cup in one gulp, put down the teacup, and vanished. Old villain, you have to give us an explanation today. Apart from the ultimate profundity of the law of karma, what else is this kid hiding? The little rabbit stared at the blood ancestor with a ferocious gaze, as though she wanted to eat him alive. The Feather Emperor also looked at the blood ancestor expectantly. The blood ancestor, on the other hand, was calmly sipping on his tea. This was the Longjing tea he had picked in the Black Tortoise World's tea garden. It tasted pretty good. Are you going to tell me or not? The little rabbit roared. What can you do if I don't tell you? The blood ancestor chuckled, infuriating the little rabbit. The Black Tortoise World. The sovereign's divine weapons were all repairing their damaged bodies in the land of origin. Qin Feiyang stood in the air above the herb field. His senses stretched out endlessly, allowing him to see everything clearly. Everyone's law miniatures had already fused, and they were all in seclusion to comprehend the profundity of the law. The white-eyed wolf, Princess Huofeng, and the Mas de Jura, who were in the process of fusing their inheritances, were all emitting terrifying auras. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang was stunned. The next moment, he appeared in the tea garden. He saw Huo Wenchang sitting alone in the tea garden, listening to the birds chirping around him while sipping a pot of fragrant tea. He looked extremely comfortable. Uncle. Qin Feiyang smiled. Huo Wenchang opened his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile. You're back. Qin Feiyang nodded and sat opposite Huo Wenchang. He asked, Are you used to it? I've never been so comfortable. I'm really light with nothing to do. Huo Wenchang poured a cup of tea and handed it to Qin Feiyang. As long as Uncle likes it. Have you fused with the law miniatures I gave you? Qin Feiyang took the teacup and asked. Yes. I haven't thanked you properly for this. Thank you very much. Huo Wenchang nodded, his face full of gratitude. Although he used to be the patriarch of the Fire Phoenix clan, the law miniatures were also a divine object that he dreamed of. You're welcome. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and took a sip of tea. He hesitated and sighed. There's something I think I still need to tell you. What is it? Huo Wenchang was suspicious. Qin Feiyang briefly told him about the death of the Dragon King, and the other two. Huo Wenchang's face suddenly stiffened when he heard this. His mood that had settled down with great difficulty was once again stirred up. Qin Feiyang sighed secretly. Although Huo Wenchang had left the Feng people, with Huo Wenchang's sense of responsibility, he would definitely worry about the future of the Feng people. Frankly speaking, compared to people like Bing Changtian, Huo Wenchang was many times better. He really didn't understand what this Feng Ho was thinking. After a long time, Huo Wenchang calmed down the emotions in his heart and asked, "In that case, the Phoenix clan is now without a leader?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Maybe this is karma." Huo Wenchang sighed deeply. If Feng Ho hadn't joined the Dragon King and the Lord of Kailan to sneak attack the human sovereign and the others and seal the princess of the Divine Kingdom back then, how could she have died because of this? The so-called karma principle was the principle of the cycle of karma. Qin Feiyang said, "I know you must be worried about the Feng people, uncle, so I'm telling you now and I respect your decision." Huo Wenchang was slightly stunned and smiled. "Do you think I'll go back to the Feng people?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "My dear nephew, the human heart is very complicated. Although Feng Ho died because of the mistakes she made back then, although she was killed by Long Chun and had nothing to do with me and Wu, the Feng people won't think so. They will blame Feng Ho's death on us. Because they will say that if we didn't take away the Dominator divine weapon of the Feng people, how could Feng Ho be killed so easily? Besides, Feng Ho's death also has something to do with you. Now that we are with you, they will naturally think that Wu and I are accomplices. So, if we go back now, not only will they not accept us, but they will also slander us, saying that we instigated you to kill Feng Ho so that you can take the opportunity to seize the power of the Feng people." Huo Wenchang waved his hand. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but admire him. He was indeed the leader of a family. He could see the problem so clearly. Chapter 3892. Now we can't go back. Otherwise, we will continue to be wronged. I don't mind. But I can't bear to see Wu being hurt by her people again. So I have to wait. Wait for the elders of the Feng people to take the initiative to come to us and ask us to go back. Huo Wenchang said. After all, you still care about the Feng people. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. I don't want to care, but I can't. After all, I am a member of the Feng people. There are some responsibilities that I can't shirk. Otherwise, my conscience will always be condemned. Let's talk about it later. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. The culprits, Bing Changtian and Feng Ho, have been killed one after another. No matter how deep the grudge is, it should disappear. Huo Wenchang sighed. All right. No matter what you do, I will support you unconditionally. Qin Feiyang smiled. Thank you. Huo Wenchang was grateful. No need. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. Then you can continue. I will go and take a look elsewhere. Okay. Huo Wenchang nodded. After Qin Feiyang left, Huo Wenchang looked up at the sky and muttered, Feng Ho, if you knew this would happen, why didn't you regret it? You didn't hurt yourself, but the entire Feng people. Soul Sealing Valley. This place was now famous in the Black Tortoise world. No one was willing to set foot here. But at this moment, there was a woman who was suppressed in the Soul Sealing Valley. This person was Bing Runing. Obviously, the person who suppressed her was the demon ancestor. Qin Feiyang, you damn bastard, let me out. Seeing Qin Feiyang appear in the sky above the Soul Sealing Valley, Bing Runing's face was ashen. She immediately shouted angrily, Do you still think that I am attracted to your beauty? Qin Feiyang smiled mockingly. This was definitely a place that could make people collapse. Bing Runing could hold on until now. She was quite powerful. You are not human. You are a beast. Bing Runing clenched her fists. In the beginning, Qin Feiyang did not kill her. She did have such thoughts. Who would have thought that when they arrived at the Black Tortoise world, they would be faced with a calamity? Not only had his fighting soul been snatched away, but he had also been suppressed in this disgusting place. It was worse than death. Don't scold me. The one suppressing you is the fiend ancestor. What does that have to do with me? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Aren't you all in cahoots? Bing Renning roared. You're wrong about that. I'm really not with him. However, his actions are very much to my liking. I'm here to tell you a piece of good news. Feng Ho is dead. Qin Feiyang chuckled. What? Bing Renning's eyes trembled. She was still waiting for Feng Ho to save her, because among all the Feng people, only Feng Ho had the ability to save her from Qin Feiyang. Who would have thought that she would receive such grievous news? Enjoy it. Qin Feiyang smiled and turned around to leave. Don't go. Please let me go. I beg you. I'll do anything you want me to do. Even if I have to be your concubine or maid, I'm willing to serve you. Bing Renning quickly cried out with a pleading look on her face. You? I think you're dirty. Qin Feiyang laughed out loud without looking back. Then he disappeared without a trace in an instant. It would be too easy to kill such a woman. He had to torture her slowly to vent the hatred in his heart. Half an hour later, other than the masked Shura who was integrating the inheritance, everyone else was called out by Qin Feiyang. Elder Hua Hizhongtian, the alliance leader, the three giants of the Heavenly Hall, Yun Xiang, Azure Dragon, etc. Qin Feiyang briefly explained the situation and said with a smile, That's it. You can decide whether to stay or leave. In the end, no one wanted to stay. Although the cultivation environment of the Black Tortoise world was very good, it was still Qin Feiyang's territory. Moreover, people like Elder Hua and the alliance leader had to consider their disciples. As the people closest to Qin Feiyang, they knew that if they wanted to stay, Qin Feiyang would definitely welcome them. However, there was no other way. They had their own responsibilities. The Order of the Four Continents needed them to maintain. Before leaving, Qin Feiyang also returned the Red Sword and Golden Crow Pearl to the Demon Hall and Heavenly Hall. Although the giants of the four continents had returned to their original state and were controlled by the four major forces, the demon ancestor also kept his promise and personally went to the four continents to set up a 5,000-year time array for the four major forces. With this time array, in addition to Elder Hua and the others, who had opened the door of potential and merged with the laws, their strength would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. On this day, Yun Xiang arrived at the temple and fought a bloody battle with Hizhongtian, shocking everyone. Although Hizhongtian had already joined Qin Feiyang, the grudge between the He and Yun families was too deep. If he didn't settle it personally, Yun Xiang wouldn't be able to feel at ease. However, he didn't bully Hizhongtian and didn't use his ultimate ultimacy or sovereign divine weapon. Even so, Hizhongtian still lost miserably. However, in the end, Yun Xiang didn't kill him. From now on, the grudge between our families is written off. He crushed Hizhongtian's body with one palm and left after saying that. Hizhongtian also heaved a sigh of relief. In the past few years in the Black Tortoise world, although Yun Xiang hadn't come to find him, he knew that Yun Xiang definitely wouldn't let it go. Especially after understanding Yun Xiang's current strength, he felt even more nervous. The ultimate ultimacy was something that he couldn't touch at all. If Yun Xiang wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. Not to mention Yun Xiang. Even Yun Zhongtian, who had been cultivating by the little rabbit side for many years, was now strong enough to crush him. So, to be able to use the destruction of his body in exchange for Yun Xiang's forgiveness, in his opinion, it was already a great deal. Of course, he knew even better. The biggest reason why Yun Xiang could forgive him was because of Qin Feiyang. If it wasn't for Qin Feiyang's face, even if he knelt down and begged for mercy, Yun Xiang wouldn't let him go. In the blink of an eye, another half a month passed. The gate to the Divine Kingdom was still suspended in the sky above the core area of the Land of the Buried Gods. But now there wasn't a single living thing in the Land of the Buried Gods. Even ferocious beasts didn't dare to step in. However, there were many spies hidden at the two entrances of the Land of the Buried Gods. These spies were naturally sent by the various forces in order to monitor the situation in the Land of the Buried Gods. On this day, Qin Feiyang appeared from the Black Tortoise world with Li Feng. Li Feng was now following Qin Feiyang closely. Wherever Qin Feiyang went, he would go. Those who didn't know would think that he was Qin Feiyang's bodyguard. During this period of time, the Blood Ancestor, the Little Rabbit, and the Feather Emperor had been staying together. They either sat on Sky Cloud Island to drink and chat or wandered around. In short, they were in a very leisurely state. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng appeared. After greeting the three of them, they opened a space-time tunnel and prepared to leave. Where are you guys going? The Little Rabbit twisted the wine pot and asked. Dragons. Qin Feiyang said. Why are we going to dragons? The Little Rabbit was stunned and puzzled. Of course we're going to find Long Chun and take back what belongs to us. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Emperor's sword? The Blood Ancestor asked. And Qin Feiyang nodded. Back then in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, he had already agreed to return the Emperor's sword, Thousand Phoenix Mountain, Thieving Heaven Realm, and the Purple Gold Dragon Ball to him. But Long Chun hadn't returned it yet. He had no choice but to personally go to the dragons. It's good to get it back as soon as possible. The Blood Ancestor nodded and asked. Do you need us to cheer you on? Cheer me on? Qin Feiyang was speechless. Even if Long Chun had the Heavenly God Sword, he wouldn't dare to confront him directly. He said indifferently, You guys can relax here and bask in the sun. Just as he finished speaking, Qin Feiyang patted his head and looked at the Feather Emperor. Old Ancestor, I encountered a sovereign weapon in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. He has some connections with you. What sovereign weapon? The Feather Emperor was suspicious. Qin Feiyang entered the Black Tortoise world and summoned the Green Cauldron from the Land of Source. Then he brought the Green Cauldron in front of the Feather Emperor. And the Feather Emperor looked at the Green Cauldron suspiciously. It seems that too much time has passed and you can't remember. Back then, in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, I was surrounded by people from the three major races. In the end, you appeared and saved me from their hands. The Green Cauldron explained. Let me think. When the Feather Emperor heard this, he lowered his head and pondered. After a long time he suddenly said, I remember. So it's you. I really forgot. It's been too long. You forgot, but it didn't. These are in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. If it helps, I won't be able to subdue sovereign weapons like the Ice Phoenix sword. Qin Feiyang smiled. I see. The Feather Emperor nodded and said with a smile, This is fate. Then he looked at the Green Cauldron and said suspiciously, But I seem to remember that you don't want to leave the Sky Bell Divine Treasure? Why did you come out with Qin Feiyang this time? It's a long story. The Green Cauldron sighed. Then you guys can talk slowly, Qin Feiyang said. Okay. Speaking of which, we can be considered old friends. The Feather Emperor nodded with a smile. Right. Qin Feiyang patted his head again and looked at the Feather Emperor suspiciously. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom said that the 3,000 clones are a secret technique of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon. How did it end up in your hands? Of course she gave it to me personally. The Feather Emperor said. In other words, the Princess of the Divine Kingdom also has the 3,000 clones? Qin Feiyang was bewildered. In the past she did. But not now. The Feather Emperor shook his head. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang didn't understand. No matter what divine technique it is, there are only two ways to give it to someone. One is to pass it down. The other is to engrave the divine technique and give it to the other party. Back then, when facing the sneak attack of the Dragon King's group, in a moment of desperation, sister-in-law directly engraved the 3,000 clones and gave them to me. This method would cause her to lose the 3,000 clones. The Feather Emperor explained. Regarding this matter, you have a huge responsibility. Do you know that? The Blood Ancestor snorted coldly. What responsibility? The Feather Emperor was puzzled. These 3,000 clones were originally left for Qin Batian. But what about you? You insisted on creating a divine treasure to test him. In the end, the Demon Ancestor got it. If not for Qin Feiyang snatching it away by chance, how are you going to compensate for this loss? The Blood Ancestor was dissatisfied. The Feather Emperor smiled embarrassedly. All these are not important. Even if I didn't snatch it away from Zhuge Mingyang back then, Given the demon ancestor's current personality, he would still give it to me. However, these 3,000 clones, should I pass it down widely? Qin Feiyang said. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.